Chapter 2601. A Bloodbath in the Three Organizations. The Gentle Breeze Ancestor, Gongji, Wu Lu, and Changfeng Yun of the Four Symbols Alliance stood with the traitors of the Righteous Alliance, Luo Mantian and He Dao. Every single one of them were figures of legends on the cloud plane. They were people that many cultivators would not be able to see in their entire life. Any single action from them could influence the entire cloud plane. They, a total of 6 Grand Primes, represented over half of the peak experts across the entire cloud plane. They all stood sternly within the protective formations as they stared outside. There was a smear of worry that rarely ever appeared on their faces. Sigh. We're doomed now. If we don't receive any foreign reinforcements, it's impossible for our Four Symbols Alliance to survive. Gongji, Wu Lu, are you satisfied with this? The Gentle Breeze Ancestor let out a long sigh and said with a heavy heart. His voice was filled with blame. He had never agreed with Gongji and Wu Lu's actions. Now that everything had developed like this, it was basically all because of the two of them. The Gentle Breeze Ancestor said nothing about Luo Mantian and He Dao. Even though they had once been enemies, and their grievances had reached a point beyond reconciliation, their Four Symbols Alliance really needed the two of them right now. Gentle Breeze, it has already happened. There is no use bringing it up anymore. None of us knew that Jian Chen was actually a member of the Martial Soul lineage, and the Martial Soul lineage would completely match up to the rumors in strength. Their 3 chaotic primes are just too terrifying, Gongji said emotionlessly. She looked into the distance, staring at where the Martial Soul lineage resided in outer space. Fear and dread appeared from the depths of her eyes. It was not just her. In reality, all the peak experts on the cloud plane had become quite frightened by the terrifying battle prowess of the Martial Soul lineage. 9th Heavenly Layer chaotic primes could actually kill Grand Primes so easily, claiming the lives of 2 in such a short amount of time. This matter was just far too shocking. They would have never believed it if it had not occurred right in front of them. Young Star-Lord, you've seen it for yourself as well. Our Four Symbols Alliance is no longer their opponent with the entry of the Martial Soul lineage. We can only depend on you now. Gongji looked at the young Star-Lord and pleaded. The Gentle Breeze Ancestor, Changfeng Yun, Wu Lu, He Dao, and Luo Mantian all looked at the young Star-Lord. Indeed, their Four Symbols Alliance had completely lost the upper hand in the current situation. The Martial Soul lineage alone had caused them such problems, and there were still Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji from the Righteous Alliance. Their only hope now was the young Star-Lord. Just as you had hoped, we've killed a 2nd Grand Prime. 8th Junior Brother, take the corpse. Chu Jian laughed and flicked his sword. Zhang Hu's corpse directly flew into the Martial Soul Mountain. The Martial Soul Array on the illusionary Martial Soul Mountain had stopped operating. Jian Chen caught Zhang Hu's corpse with one hand. As he sensed the terrifying energy inside, he secretly rejoiced. He had never thought that he would obtain the corpses of 2 Grand Primes so soon. The immortal devouring orchid strength would be able to increase drastically. These are their space rings. Seniors, I'll leave the space rings for you to handle. Jian Chen removed Gu Li and Zhang Hu's space rings and handed them over. Regular Grand Primes probably don't have anything that can interest us. You 5 better take it and see if there is anything you need in them. Han Zong, Chu Jian, and Yu Chao stepped onto the Martial Soul Mountain. They did not even look at the space rings, directly passing them to Yun Ziding, Xueqi, Bai Rufeng, and Qing Shan. All right. I won't hold back then. Yun Ziding chuckled. He accepted the space ring and checked its contents. There are quite a lot of colored divine crystals in here. I'll take some of the colored divine crystals and materials. You 4 can take the rest. Afterwards, Xueqi, Bai Rufeng, and Qing Shan all took what they needed, leaving the remainder to Jian Chen. The belongings of the 2 Grand Primes were divided among the 5 of them just like this. Jian Chen did not look at what remained. He directly stowed the 2 space rings away. Thank you for your assistance, or our Righteous Alliance would have probably been done for. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak, Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji approached the Martial Soul Mountain. They all clasped their fists. Even though the most powerful members of the Martial Soul lineage were only chaotic primes, they dared not underestimate them at all. They treated them with great caution. Suddenly, powerful pulses of energy appeared on the cloud plane, which attracted Jian Chen's attention. Jian Chen was currently in outer space, and the cloud plane was a floating piece of flat land in space. As such, he could clearly see the 5 regions. He discovered intense battles on the eastern, northern, and central regions. The terrifying shockwaves formed visible ripples, wreaking havoc there as storms. Jian Chen could tell with a single glance that the battle in the northern region was at where the God's Fallen clan stood. "You're attacking the God's Fallen clan?" Jian Chen asked. The light in his eyes flickered as he became eager. The God's Fallen clan, the Taoist sect of emergence, and the heaven-quaking sect had betrayed the righteous alliance. "We naturally will not be sparing them." Lian Wuji ground his teeth. "That's right. Luo Mantian and He Dao have to pay a heavy price for their betrayal. We will hold a bloodbath in the God's Fallen clan, heaven-quaking sect, and Taoist sect of emergence. We will destroy them completely and spare no one," Zhou Dao said as he brimmed with killing intent. This time, the sudden betrayal had almost doomed them all. As a result, they all hated the three traitors. "Peak Lord, how are your wounds?" Jian Chen looked at the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak as his brows furrowed. "It's not a problem right now. I've temporarily suppressed the curse." "Go deal with the three clans and sects first." The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak waved his hand and said rather weakly. "All right then. We'll deal with the God's Fallen clan, Taoist sect of emergence, and heaven-quaking sect first. There's no need to show mercy this time." Jian Chen immediately flew towards the northern region. He was impatient, as if he was even more eager than the Righteous Alliance in destroying the three organizations. The Taoist sect of emergence, the heaven-quaking sect, and the God's Fallen clan are all protected by powerful formations. Our great elders are not enough to get through them. We need to personally take action. Tong Wuming looked at where the three organizations were and said to Lian Wuji and Zhou Dao. Afterwards, the three of them split up and went to the three organizations. At the same time, a young child sat on the roof of an inn in the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire. If Jian Chen were present, he would definitely recognize the child. He was the one he had met in the Myriad Bone Guild. He only seemed like an ordinary child on the surface, but his strength was unfathomable. The Nine Brilliant Star Lord probably wants to use his foster son, Tian Yao, to eliminate Jian Chen. However, he overestimates his foster son's ability far too much. Unless he uses the forces of the Star Brilliance plane or personally interferes, having his foster son eliminate Jian Chen would be a fool's dream. However, if he personally interferes, he'll get involved too much. There will naturally be more and more traces. The Nine Brilliant Star Lord probably doesn't have that courage, or once the Anata Grand Exalt peers into the heavenly secrets and learns the truth. Let alone certain death for him. Even the Blood Tier Grand Exalt will be dragged into the matter for destroying the Anata Grand Exalt's fruit of ways. I really don't want to imagine just how terrifying an angered Anata Grand Exalt is. A fruit appeared in the heartless child's hand. He ate the fruit as he paid attention to the endless flow of people on the streets. He murmured, "Since Jian Chen is a fruit of ways, he'll die in the end. However, he can't die on the cloud plane." With that, the heartless child suddenly looked at outer space. His gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the distance and see the depths of space. "Even that bird has come. The tiny cloud plane seems like it'll become livelier and livelier." The heartless child smiled gently as he got more and more interested in the whole matter. Chapter 2602. A cunning scheme. A meteorite hovered silently in a region of space extremely distant from the cloud plane. It seemed to have fused with the surrounding stars. An azure-robed man stood on the meteorite. He was like a ghost, standing there silently. His presence was completely concealed such that he seemed to have fused with the space there. Even if someone stood right before him, it would be very difficult for them to discover his existence. The azure-robed man was the renowned Azure Pung King in the Saints' world, as well as one of the four heavenly kings of the Lone Heaven Plane, the heavenly king of Azure Brilliance. Currently, he stood on the meteorite with his arms behind his back. His eyes were extremely piercing as he stared at the tiny speck of land floating in the distance. The land was the cloud plane. Due to the distance, the cloud plane appeared to be the size of a sesame seed in the heavenly king of Azure Brilliance's eyes. The Nine Brilliant Star Lord has already publicly announced that he's entering seclusion for good, attempting to break through to Grand Exalt. In the end, his foster son came to the cloud plane and did whatever he wanted, offending Jian Chen. It looks like the Nine Brilliant Star Lord didn't tell his foster son that the Anata Grand Exalt is still alive, which is why his foster son even did something that would provoke the heavenly palace of Bishing. The heavenly king of Azure Brilliance murmured as he stared at the cloud plane. Even though he was extremely distant from the cloud plane, he could clearly see everything happening there. The heavenly king of azure brilliance seemed to think of something. His lips suddenly curled into a strange smile as he said to himself, I wonder how the 9 brilliant Star-Lord will respond when he learns that Jian Chen has died to his foster son's hands. However, his foster son is just a little too weak. He won't be able to kill Jian Chen alone. Jian Chen has constantly been a thorn in my side as well. I'm tempted to just kill him and end it all, but there's nothing I can do because of the Anata Grand Exalt. However, since the 9 brilliant Star-Lord's foster son has fallen out with him, I might as well go with the flow. The heavenly king of azure brilliance's smile became even stranger and more sinister. In the northern region of the cloud plain, the entire God-Fallen clan was enveloped by a powerful barrier. Energy surged within the formation, shining with blinding light. Endless energy maintained the maximum defenses of the formation. Many experts hovered in the air outside of the formation. Under the lead of 4 old men, they constantly launched powerful attacks at the formations, leading to the eruption of constant, deafening booms. The experts who attacked the God's Fallen clan all came from the Tong family. After the martial soul lineage's appearance, which allowed them to gain the upper hand, Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji had all given orders to destroy the God's Fallen clan, Daoist sect of emergence, and Heaven-quaking sect. As a result, basically the entire Tong family had set out. Their 4 chaotic prime great elders lead a group of experts and arrived at the God's Fallen clan as quickly as they could. Meanwhile, the Heaven-quaking sect and the Daoist sect of emergence faced the revenge from the Fire God clan and Cosmic sect respectively. The protective formation was personally cast down by Luo Mantian. With our ability, there's no hope in destroying the formation at all unless we drain all of its power. There are teleportation formations in the God's Fallen clan. They're probably sending away the future generation of the clan through these teleportation formations. We need to get through the formation quickly, or only an empty clan will be left. The 4 great elders from the Tong family called out. They all panicked inside. The formation was so powerful that there was nothing they could do about it. Step back, let me do it. Just as they were utterly worried, an old voice boomed out. The ancestor of the Tong family, Tong Wuming, appeared before them. It's the old patriarch. Fantastic you've come. The 4 great elders rejoiced as they bowed. Greetings to the ancestor. The many members of the Tong family all bowed. They were in high spirits. Tong Wuming did not reply to them. He held a metal rod, and as his energy circulated, a terrifying pressure immediately appeared from the weapon. It was devastating. The metal rod was clearly a god artifact. It was at the medium quality. Tong Wuming's rod directly struck the protective formations of the God's Fallen clan. With a great rumble, the mountains in the surroundings shook, and the terrifying storm of energy flattened it all. A huge gash appeared in space. The protective formation of the God's Fallen clan flickered violently. It flashed as its energy depleted at an astonishing rate. However, the formation managed to endure Tong Wuming's strike in the end. Tong Wuming did not stop. He lifted the rod and continued to attack. Whenever the rod fell, it would unleash earth-shaking energy. Its might was extremely shocking, causing the ground to tremble violently and whole swathes of land to collapse. He used a total of 5 attacks to finally destroy the protective formation of the God's Fallen clan. The structures beneath it were now exposed. The entire God's Fallen clan had already fallen into a mess now. The members of the God's Fallen clan were all fearful as they rushed about frantically. They all charged towards the teleportation formations of the God's Fallen clan. 2 teleportation formations stood at the center square of the God's Fallen clan. They constantly flickered as the outstanding descendants of the God's Fallen clan fled. 5 people of various ages hovered in the air. They gave off surging presences. The 5 of them were chaotic primes. They were the 5 great elders of the God's Fallen clan. However, their faces were rather pale. The formations of the God's Fallen clan had been supported by the 5 of them. Now that Tong Wuming had smashed through the formations with absolute force, they were affected as well. Let's go destroy the teleportation formations. A great elder of the Tong family called out from behind Tong Wuming. He immediately charged towards the teleportation formations. Don't you dare! A great elder of the God's Fallen clan called out furiously. He was grief-stricken as he already accepted death. He went up to stop him. However, at this moment space exploded. a huge spatial crack appeared. A metal rod ripped through the sky and crashed down with devastating power. The great elder from the God's Fallen clan was unable to put up a fight at all. The metal rod struck his head, and he died on the spot. Tong Wuming had dealt that strike. He used his supreme strength as a Grand Prime to personally kill a great elder of the God's Fallen clan. The expressions of the 4 remaining great elders all hardened at this sight. Tong Wuming, you are a respected senior after all. How can you stoop so low and do something as shameful as harassing us juniors? The great elder of the God's Fallen clan, Luo Heping, called out. His expression was extremely ugly. If it were just the 4 great elders of the Tong family, they could charge their way out of here, but there was no chance for them to survive once a Grand Prime took part. In order to stop the 5 of you from escaping and to reduce the casualties of my Tong family, I can only take personal action, Tong Wuming said indifferently before swinging his metal rod towards the 4 other great elders. The difference between Chaotic Prime and Grand Prime was just too great. Coupled with the fact that none of the Chaotic Primes from the God's Fallen clan were particularly powerful, they were basically all helpless against Tong Wuming. Tong Wuming struck out again and again, showing no mercy at all. Very soon, he killed the 4 remaining great elders of the God's Fallen clan. Not a single one escaped. The 4 great elders of the Tong family hunted down the infinite primes of the God's Fallen clan that fled in the surroundings. Immediately, the whole situation became a one-sided slaughter. The Tong family hunted down the members of the God's Fallen clan everywhere. Due to the huge disparity in strength, all the clansmen of the God's Fallen clan were reduced to lambs for slaughter. Chapter 2603, reduced to food at that moment, the God's Fallen clan could not fight back against the Tong family at all. All of their Grand Primes and Chaotic Primes were gone. On the other hand, the Tong family chose to go overkill. They used their 4 Chaotic Primes against the infinite primes of the God's Fallen clan, and the infinite primes of the Tong family against the God Kings of the God's Fallen clan. As a result, basically all the members of the God's Fallen clan would face opponents a major realm of cultivation stronger than them. Naturally, they could not put up a fight. The battle that erupted in the God's Fallen clan was extremely intense. In a short amount of time, the entire clan suffered heavy casualties. The 5 dead great elders of the God's Fallen clan became objects of desires in the eyes of the experts of the Tong family, as their space rings were extremely appealing. As a result, the 4 great elders agreed to send one person just to collect the space rings. Luo Heping, you never thought you would end up like this today, right? Ha ha ha, the great elder of the Tong family, Tong Xiao, grabbed Luo Heping by the neck and lifted him high up in the sky. He laughed viciously. He and Luo Heping had already developed personal grievances prior to this. He had wanted to kill Luo Heping a very long time ago. Unfortunately, they were both high-ranking members of 2 peak clans on the Cloud Plane. In order to not worsen the relationship between the 2 clans, he could only bury this hatred. Now that Luo Heping's corpse was in his hands, he felt extremely satisfied even though the former did not die to his hands. Luo Heping, although I couldn't kill you with my own hands, I can destroy your corpse such that you die a corpseless death. Tong Xiao laughed aloud. Cold light filled his eyes. He was about to destroy Luo Heping's corpse with that. However, at this moment, a streak of light shot over. Jian Chen arrived beside Tong Xiao and clasped his fist at him. Senior, this is the corpse of a chaotic prime after all. Just destroying it like would be quite the pity. Why don't you leave it for me to handle? Tong Xiao's face immediately sank from that. However, when he turned around and saw Jian Chen, all of his negative emotions evaporated. He immediately changed his attitude, smiling amicably and saying, "It's the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan. All right. Since the patriarch has asked, I'll leave the corpse of that bastard Luo Heping to the patriarch." Tong Xiao paused when he reached there. After a short moment of hesitation, he passed over the space ring he had taken from Luo Heping's corpse. "Patriarch, this is Luo Heping's space ring. You should take it as well." Tong Xiao was one of the 4 chaotic prime great elders of the Tong family, basically a supreme existence in the clan. However, he did not act haughtily at all when he faced Jian Chen. Instead, he was extremely polite. All the chaotic primes on the Cloud Plane had witnessed the entirety of the battle that had taken place in outer space. As a result, all the chaotic primes and even some infinite primes on the Cloud Plane gained a deep understanding of just how great the power behind Jian Chen was. "I only want the corpse. You should keep the space ring," Jian Chen said. He did not act arrogantly at all. Instead, he behaved in an approachable manner, grabbing Luo Heping's corpse and tossing it into the water cloud hall. My friend Jian Chen seems to be in great need of corpses. All members of the Tong family, do not destroy a single corpse. Regardless of their strength, keep the corpses of all God's fallen clan members intact, Tong Wuming said. Immediately, all the people of the Tong family became careful. When they killed their opponents, they did their best to keep their bodies in one piece. Thank you, senior. Jian Chen rejoiced as he thanked him hurriedly. Hee. There's no need for you to be so polite. Our Tong family should be the ones thanking you instead. If it weren't for your martial soul lineage, our Tong family would really be done for. Tong Wuming arrived before Jian Chen and smiled like a benevolent old man. Afterwards, the 4 other chaotic prime corpses all ended up with Jian Chen. Jian Chen did not miss any of the infinite prime corpses either. They were all stored in the water cloud hall as nourishment for the immortal devouring orchid's future growth. Of course, Jian Chen did not go overboard. He only took the corpses. He left all the space rings to the Tong family. After collecting the space rings of the 5 chaotic primes from the God's Fallen clan, Tong Xiao directed his attention to the infinite primes of the God's Fallen clan. He began to slaughter them all. There were 20 to 30 infinite prime elders in the God's Fallen clan. Even though there were many of them, they died one after another, as they were hunted down by the 4 chaotic primes of the Tong family. Even the 9th heavenly layer infinite primes could not escape death. Tong family, are you really going to ignore the friendship of so many years and kill our entire God's Fallen clan? An 8th heavenly layer infinite prime old man bellowed out furiously. His face was filled with despair and an unwillingness to accept the situation. No one paid attention to him, nor did anyone take pity on him. Many experts had witnessed what happened in outer space. If the martial soul lineage had not suddenly appeared, the God's Fallen clan would not be the one destroyed. Instead, it would have been the Tong family. Immortal devouring orchid, you'll have a great meal with the corpses here. Go. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Jian Chen hovered in the air as he called for the immortal devouring orchid. The beautiful petals of the immortal devouring orchid swayed gently as it sent an excited mental pulse at Jian Chen. Afterwards, it directly landed on the ground and countless thin roots grew furiously. They became longer and longer, thicker and thicker. All of them penetrated the ground. The immortal devouring orchid just rooted down in the God's Fallen clan. Its roots submerged into the ground, spreading out in all directions rapidly. They basically covered the entire God's Fallen clan. Jian Chen could clearly tell with the senses of his soul that the immortal devouring orchid's roots were like a huge net, covering every inch of the God's Fallen clan. All the blood that had oozed into the ground was sucked up by its roots. At the same time, many of the roots poked out from the ground like sharp barbs, piercing directly into the corpses. Immediately, something strange happened. The corpses of the godhood cultivators and even cultivators below godhood from the God's Fallen clan withered at a visible rate. All the blood and energy was drained from their bodies, and they were reduced to mummies in a short while. There were just far too many corpses in the God's Fallen clan, and the number was rapidly increasing. As a result, the immortal devouring orchid did not devour them whole. It only absorbed their essence. With your current level of cultivation, you'll reach your limit very quickly if you devour the corpses of God Kings. I'll keep the corpses of God Kings for now. Go devour the corpses of overgods and those below overgod for now, Jian Chen said to the immortal devouring orchid secretly. He did not just stand by idly either. He paid close attention to the battle in Thess, Kentucky. Whenever an infinite prime from the God's Fallen clan died, he would immediately go collect his corpse. All the space rings went to the Tong family. After all, the Tong family was putting in the effort to destroy the God's Fallen clan. He had to leave some benefit for them. Chapter 2604. Nurturing with painstaking effort. This time, the immortal devouring orchid will definitely reach the primordial realm. Even if it doesn't devour the corpses of the God Kings, infinite primes, and chaotic primes, just the corpses of overgods and below should be enough for it to break through, thought Jian Chen as he became eager. The God's Fallen clan was a peak clan on the cloud plane. They had a history that spanned 1,000,000 years. After such a long period of growth, the members of the God's Fallen clan had reached the 100,000s, or even over 1,000,000 in number. Even though there were not a lot of people at God King or above, there were many below God King. There were even more at the origin realm and sainthood. If all of these people were combined, They would even be equivalent to over a dozen infinite primes. For corpses of infinite primes, the immortal devouring orchid would need some time to digest them. However, the immortal devouring orchid can basically digest sainthood, origin realm, and godhood cultivators almost instantly. Although the energy within these low-level cultivators are nowhere close to infinite primes, there are a lot of them. For the immortal devouring orchid, once the quantity reaches a certain level, there will be an increase in quality, thought Jian Chen. He hovered in the sky, observing the battle in the God's Fallen clan as he paid close attention to the immortal devouring flower just in case any accidents occurred. After all, the immortal devouring orchid was only a god king. If it faced primordial realm experts, it would be doomed. This plant actually dares to devour the clansmen of our God's Fallen clan. You deserve to die. An infinite prime within the God's Fallen clan bellowed out furiously. He immediately used a god-tier battle skill, knocking away his opponent, an elder of the Tong family, before rushing over to the immortal devouring orchid. He surged with killing intent. However, as soon as he moved, an old man blocked him and struck him with terrifying energy. He was a great elder of the Tong family. In the end, before the infinite prime from the God's Fallen clan could approach the immortal devouring orchid, he was killed off. Patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, here's the corpse. The great elder directly tossed the corpse to Jian Chen. Elder Luo, she is dead as well. Basically all the mid and late infinite prime elders of our God's Fallen clan are dead. There's only me and a few early infinite prime elders remaining. In the battlefield elsewhere in the clan, a young man was covered in blood and vicious wounds as he battled against an elder of the Tong family who was clearly much more powerful than him. He was an infinite prime elder of the God's Fallen clan, Luo Fei. Luo Fei's eyes were currently filled with despair. The chaotic primes of the Tong family went as far as to lower themselves and personally kill the infinite primes of the God's Fallen clan. As a result, they were completely powerless. Now, all the stronger elders of the God's Fallen clan were dead. The great elders of the Tong family had directed their attention to cultivators at his level, killing them off one by one. Luo Fei knew he could not live for much longer because it would be his turn very soon. The Tong family had sealed up the God's Fallen clan such that people could only come in and not leave. It was impossible for them to flee. Go deal with the God Kings of the God's Fallen clan. Leave this person to me. A chaotic prime from the Tong family arrived before Luo Fei. He stared at Luo Fei coldly as he spoke to the elder who had been fighting him. Yes, great elder. The infinite prime of the Tong family bowed politely before immediately flying off elsewhere. Ha ha ha, I, Luo Fei, am actually worthy of dying to a great elder of the Tong family. Even if it's death, it's something for me to be proud about, Luo Fei said miserably. His face was covered with blood. As he laughed aloud, blood with traces of crushed organs oozed from his mouth. Humph. The great elder of the Tong family snorted coldly and stabbed his sword at Luo Fei. Stop. At this moment, a woman called out. The white-robed Tian Shuang flew over from the distance and headed right into the God's Fallen clan. She called out to the great elder who was about to kill Luo Fei. The great elder from the Tong family frowned. He suddenly looked at Tian Shuang, and his eyes were rather cold. Tian Shuang's heart tightened. She immediately reacted to the situation and said to Jian Chen, Patriarch, can you spare Luo Fei? Although Luo Fei is a member of the God's Fallen clan, his nature isn't bad. Tian Shuang, is he your friend? Jian Chen glanced at Luo Fei. He was a third heavenly layer infinite prime. An expert who did not raise any attention from Jian Chen at all. Luo Fei is my friend of many years. He also assisted me a lot in the past, said Tian Shuang. She seemed a little like she was pleading. The great elder who was about to kill Luo Fei stopped after seeing Tian Shuang plead to Jian Chen. He looked at Jian Chen from afar, as if he was waiting for Jian Chen's decision. Since he's your friend, I'll help you this time, said Jian Chen. Since Tian Shuang had already pleaded to him, he naturally would not turn her down. He immediately explained to the great elder of the Tong family. Luo Fei's talent was nothing spectacular. It was impossible for someone like that to pose any threat to Jian Chen or the Tong family. Since the patriarch has spoken, our Tong family will spare this person. The great elder chuckled and agreed extremely straightforwardly. He treated Jian Chen in a manner that was completely different from Tian Shuang. Tian Shuang, why do you save me? Luo Fei coughed up blood as his eyes were completely gloomy. He was heavily affected by what the God's Fallen clan was going through. At the same time, the roots of the immortal devouring orchid that was hidden underground stopped absorbing blood. The huge flower outside became enveloped by a dense, red mist as it gave off powerful pulses. In such a short amount of time, the immortal devouring orchid had absorbed the blood and vital energies of hundreds of thousand clansmen of the God's Fallen clan. Even though the strongest were only over gods, the energy it had accumulated was equivalent to several infinite primes after consuming such a great number of corpses. That was the immortal devouring orchid's limit. The immortal devouring orchid could not absorb a portion of the corpses. It could only let the corpse remain scattered across the ground, allowing the blood to trickle and form streams. It should be enough this time. Jian Chen stared at the immortal devouring orchid as he murmured to himself. Then he arrived before the immortal devouring orchid in a flash and personally watched over it. In just a few hours, the battle in the God's Fallen clan completely ended. The God's Fallen clan that once stood at the apex of the cloud plain had completely vanished now. Jian Chen did not collect any spoils of the battle. Instead, he watched over the immortal devouring orchid patiently. People of the Tong family had collected the scattered corpses of god kings for him. Patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, all the corpses of the god kings from the God's Fallen clan are in this space ring. There are more than 400 of them. Tong Xiao of the Four Great Elders passed a space ring that specially carried the corpses of the God's Fallen clan god kings to Jian Chen. Jian Chen's eyes lit up in joy with that. Over 400 god kings, over 20 infinite primes, and 5 chaotic primes. It was an extremely great harvest from the God's Fallen clan. It's all you who benefited from the events this time. Immortal devouring orchid, I've nurtured you with painstaking effort, so don't disappoint me. Jian Chen stared at the immortal devouring orchid and said gently. Jian Chen, I've contacted the people handling the Taoist sect of emergence and the heaven-quaking sect. The corpses of the two sects will all go to you. Tong Wuming arrived before Jian Chen and chuckled. Chapter 2605. The Orchid Breaks Through. All right. Thank you, Senior. Jian Chen was overjoyed. He had benefited so much from just the God's Fallen clan. If there were 2 other sects, Jian Chen struggled to imagine just how much energy he would collect for the immortal devouring orchid this time. I wonder if the energy in the 2 grand primes and the multiple chaotic primes and infinite primes will be enough for the immortal devouring orchid to reach chaotic prime in a single stroke. Once it reaches chaotic prime, it will be able to provide me with the greatest of help, thought Jian Chen. He anticipated that day very much. However, he also understood that the immortal devouring orchid would take quite some time to absorb all this energy. Even with sufficient nourishment, breaking through to chaotic prime could not be achieved in a single day. Junior brother, you pour so much effort into nurturing this plant. Is it worth it? After all, your growth is far too fast. It'll probably become completely useless to you in the end. A heavy voice rang out. Han Zong, Chu Jian, Yu Chao, and the other members of the martial soul lineage all arrived beside Jian Chen. They all studied the immortal devouring orchid. No, it's different. Jian Chen shook his head. He valued the immortal devouring orchid very much. Chu Jian studied the immortal devouring orchid for a while before saying in thought, this plant may grow extremely quickly right now, but as its strength rapidly grows, it'll become more difficult to increase. It might even take an extremely long time to reach Grand Prime. After all, the corpses of godhood cultivators are easy to find, so that's plenty of nourishment for it early on. However, the corpses of primordial realm experts are difficult to find. Where are you going to find so many of them in the future? Thank you for your concern, senior brother. I've actually already considered the problem of its future growth. However, I firmly believe that it will rise to the peak under my full support and be of great help to me, Jian Chen said firmly. Since the immortal devouring orchid could be praised by the sword spirits, how could it be ordinary? Afterwards, the people of the Tong family cleaned up the battlefield and scattered. Very soon, not a single person from the Tong family remained in the territory of the God's Fallen clan. Tong Wuming also bid farewell to Jian Chen in order to find an idea to deal with the curse on the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. In the blink of an eye, the battle-ridden God's Fallen clan completely descended into peace. The God's Fallen clan was a mess as far as the eyes could see. All the structures were in ruins as many mountains had been flattened. Anything of value that could be taken away was removed by the people of the Tong family. However, Jian Chen remained. After the immortal devouring orchid devoured enough essence, blood and vital energies, it was close to breaking through. He remained by its side, watching over the flower. Since the Four Symbols Alliance wants to destroy the clan founded by 8th junior brother, I don't think there's a need for them to exist any longer, Xueqi said suddenly. She was an alluring woman, but she was no less ruthless than anyone else. Our martial soul lineage doesn't go looking for trouble, but that doesn't mean we're afraid of trouble. Once people come harassing us, we will obviously make them pay the price, said Yun Ziding. First senior brother, second senior brother, third senior brother, let's go destroy the Four Symbols Alliance, Qing Shan suggested as his eyes flickered with cold light. The successors of the martial soul lineage have always been as close as brothers. Whenever one was in trouble, all of them would provide assistance. As a result, whatever happened to Jian Chen was not just Jian Chen's problem. It was the entire martial soul lineage's problem. The Four Symbols Alliance really did not pose any threat to the martial soul lineage. Even after they gained Luo Mantian and He Yi Dao, the martial soul lineage still did not take them seriously. At this moment, a powerful pulse of energy appeared. The sudden occurrence immediately attracted the attention of the martial soul lineage. The powerful pulse of energy came from the immortal devouring orchid. It had finally broken through at that moment, reaching the primordial realm. As soon as it reached the primordial realm, the immortal devouring orchid's rate at refining energy suddenly increased. Moreover, the limit of the energy it could devour each time had increased by several folds with the breakthrough. As the immortal devouring orchid's presence rose, its energy became more and more powerful as well. Jian Chen could clearly sense the essence, blood and vital energies from the people of the God's Fallen clan vanish at an unbelievable rate, becoming energy that belonged to the immortal devouring orchid. Good. You finally reached the primordial realm, Jian Chen smiled. The immortal devouring orchid's growth rate had taken him by surprise. At this rate, if it had sufficient nourishment, it would even surpass him. Suddenly, its huge stalk shook gently, and in the next moment, all the blood on the ground dried up. All the energy in the blood had been absorbed by the roots of the immortal devouring orchid, becoming its nourishment. After absorbing all the blood, its roots broke free from the ground. Every single one of them danced about madly in the air, and they were all either kilometers long or dozens of kilometers long. They reached for all the corpses on the ground and pulled them into its center. The center of the petals seemed to be hiding a huge mouth. As if it were larger on the inside, it did not swell up at all after sucking in all those corpses. In under a minute, the immortal devouring orchid had completely cleaned up the God's Fallen clan. Afterwards, all of its tendrils shrank, and it slowly returned to a meter in height. It remained next to Jian Chen like a regular flower, swaying gently with great attachment to Jian Chen. It looks like you're still not full. Let's go to the other two places, Jian Chen chuckled before using the laws of space and vanishing in an instant with the immortal devouring orchid. He hurried to where the heaven-quaking sect and Taoist sect of emergence were. The battles there had also ended, but Zhou Zhidao and Lian Wuji had already received a reminder from Tong Wuming, so they specially left behind some clansmen to clean up the battlefield and stow the corpses of some experts into space rings. As a result, when Jian Chen arrived at the two sects, he received many space rings. I am an elder of the cosmic sect, Kong Na. Greetings to the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan. All the corpses from the Taoist sect of emergence are in this space ring. There are 4 chaotic prime great elders, 32 regular infinite prime elders, and many other disciples below the primordial realm. I am an elder of the fire god clan, Lian Xian. Greetings to the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan. Under the special orders of the ancestors, we've saved these corpses for the patriarch. The heaven-quaking sect had a total of 5 chaotic primes, 30 infinite primes and the people who handed over the space rings were all infinite prime elders from the cosmic sect and fire god clan. They were very polite to Jian Chen, speaking to him in a very approachable manner. The God's Fallen clan and heaven-quaking sect had 5 chaotic primes each, while the Taoist sect of emergence had 4. This time, just the corpses of chaotic primes have amounted to 14, and there are almost 100 infinite primes. It looks like I don't have to worry about the immortal devouring orchid's growth for a very long time, thought Jian Chen. Chapter 2606. Right behind you with a flip of Jian Chen's hand, a fist-sized blue divine hall appeared. The divine hall was the water cloud hall. With a single thought, its door slowly opened. As if an invisible force had appeared from inside, The space rings in Jian Chen's hands were all sucked in there. Immortal devouring orchid. Just cultivate in the water cloud hall for the next period of time. If there are any problems, you can contact the artifact spirit of the divine hall, Jian Chen said to the immortal devouring orchid. The pretty petals of the immortal devouring orchid swayed gently, as if it was nodding at Jian Chen. After nudging Jian Chen with great attachment, it entered the water cloud hall and vanished. Jian Chen stowed away the water cloud hall. It would be up to the immortal devouring orchid now to see just what level it could reach. He did not worry about the immortal devouring orchid being unable to use space rings at all, as the immortal devouring orchid had already developed intelligence no less than humans. Aside from its innate restrictions, making it unable to assume a humanoid form and speak, it was no different from a human. It even outdid humans in certain aspects. Opening a space ring was a piece of cake for it. The immortal devouring orchid hovered in the water cloud hall. As it had only just reached the primordial realm, it was unable to conceal all of its energy, so the power and pressure of the primordial realm would radiate from it. Space rings lay quietly on the ground before it. Suddenly, the tendrils of the immortal devouring orchid began to grow. Several dozen tendrils became dozens of meters long in a split second, wrapping around the space rings. In the next moment, the space rings were all opened and corpses flew out, piling up in the water cloud hall. Looking at the corpses, the immortal devouring orchid could not help but begin shaking. It was filled with excitement. Flower, Master said that you should start absorbing the weakest first. At this moment, a cold voice rang out in the hall. It came from the artifact spirit of the water cloud hall. I understand. Thank you for Master's bestowment, the immortal devouring orchid replied. Of course it could not speak, so it communicated with mental pulses. At the same time, the ancestor of the God's Fallen clan, Luo Mantian, stood with the ancestors of the Taoist sect of emergence, He Dao, with sunken faces on a mountain in the headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance. They stared in the direction of the God's Fallen clan and Taoist sect of emergence through the most powerful formations of the Four Symbols Alliance. Killing intent filled their faces. As Grand Primes, they could observe the entire plane with a single thought. They naturally witnessed the destruction of the God's Fallen clan and the Taoist sect of emergence, but there was nothing that they could do. As a result, they just remained hidden here like cowards, watching their powerful and once glorious sect and clan that had existed for 1,000,000 years be destroyed. Tong family, Fire God clan, Cosmic sect, there will be a day when I, Luo Mantian, will make you regret your actions, Luo Mantian said through gritted teeth. It was impossible for him not to feel pained over the destruction of something he had worked on for 1,000,000 years. Even though they could rebuild it, returning to their past glory would take an extremely long time. Don't worry. The young Star-Lord is on our side. We will have our revenge sooner or later. He Dao growled. Teske, I wouldn't say that you can blame others. After all, the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak almost died to your hands. Chong Fengyun's voice rang out. He was a middle-aged man in violet robes. He slowly made his way over from the distance. I'm talking about you in particular. Luo Mantian. Your dagger really was extraordinary. It's imbued with the laws of curses from a fourth heavenly layer Grand Prime at the very least. Fortunately, the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak was at the peak of the third heavenly layer, so he could hold his ground against the curse. If it were any other second heavenly layer Grand Prime, it wouldn't take them very long before they die to the curse, said Chong Fengyun as he smiled faintly. Even though his smile was nothing special, it seemed like a sneer, a scoff in Luo Mantian and He Dao's eyes. After all, they were traitors. They had even launched a sneak attack on the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak who trusted them dearly. Their actions were despicable from a moral sense. Chong Fengyun, you better watch your mouth. I don't mind fighting you here, Luo Mantian immediately replied coldly. This is the territory of our Four Symbols Alliance. Are you certain you want to fight me here? Chong Fengyun chuckled. He did not take Luo Mantian seriously at all. The Righteous Alliance and the Four Symbols Alliance had opposed each other for so many years. Their grievances were already established. It was impossible for them to reconcile so easily. Even though Luo Mantian had already joined them, and they now fought on the same front, it was very difficult for them to completely get along with each other. Enough! Chong Fengyun, it's not the time to create internal conflict. Breeze Cloud wants us to go to the Longevity Hall and discuss how we should deal with the future. Gong Ji arrived as well and stopped the argument between Chang Feng-yun and Luo Mantian. Very soon, the 4 remaining Grand Primes of the Four Symbols Alliance and the traitors of the Righteous Alliance gathered together. They discussed how they should face their current predicament. Gong Ji, has there been anything from the young Star Lord yet? It's impossible for us to deal with our current situation ourselves. We can only rely on the young Star Lord to send some experts from the Star Brilliance plane, the Gentle Breeze ancestor asked with furrowed brows during the meeting. Gong Ji shook her head. I've asked the young Star Lord many times for help, for him to call over from experts from the Star Brilliance plane, but the young Star Lord has never given me a straightforward ancestor. It seems like it's a painful subject for him. Gong Ji, Wu Lu, you two are solely responsible for the situation we're currently in, including Zhang Hu's death. Tell us what we should do now. Once the Martial Soul lineage and Righteous Alliance attacks us, we won't be able to last for very long with our formation alone. Once the formation shatters, our Four Symbols Alliance will suffer the same fate as the God's Fallen Clan, Heaven Quaking Sect, and Taoist Sect of Emergence. We will truly be erased from the cloud plane, Chang Feng-yun said sternly. You can't blame us for this. Who would have thought the Martial Soul lineage would suddenly appear, and who would have known that the Martial Soul lineage would not be afraid of the young Star Lord and openly oppose us, Gong Ji said emotionlessly. Quite a large argument happened during the meeting. As for the young Star Lord who remained in his luxurious residence, his face was completely sunken as well. He was in a horrible mood. Martial Soul lineage. Once the training ends, I'll ask my foster father to personally take action and make you pay the price. The young Star Lord clenched his fists tightly, as he was utterly furious. The plan this time should have been perfectly flawless. Jian Chen should have been done for. However, the Martial Soul lineage's appearance had completely reversed the situation, making him suffer a crushing defeat when he was on the verge of victory. As a result, he utterly hated the Martial Soul lineage now. Why are you so angry, young Star Lord? At this moment, a voice rang out in the empty hall. Who is it? Come out. The young Star Lord's face sank. He looked around and failed to see anyone at all. He could not find the origins of the voice either. I'm right behind you. Chapter 2607, A Life-Bound Plume, Are you toying with me? The young Star Lord said coldly. He did not look behind him because he had just checked everywhere. The hall was completely empty. There was not a shadow of a person aside from himself. Moreover, he failed to sense any activity from behind himself either. The hidden person was clearly toying with him. Young Star Lord, you are mistaken. This king has no interest in toying with the young Star Lord. The voice rang out once again. The young Star Lord's eyes suddenly narrowed. This time, the voice did not come from everywhere. It clearly originated from behind him. Moreover, he could tell from the voice that the person was inches away from him. The young Star Lord immediately turned around and saw a man in azure robe standing silently behind him. It seemed like he was smiling. The man did not give off any presence at all, nor did he give off any traces of being alive. If it were not for the fact that he was visually present, the young Star Lord would even doubt if someone really existed right before him. Who are you? The young Star Lord stared right at the azure-robed man. Even though the azure-robed man seemed like nothing special, he could clearly sense an extremely dangerous presence from the azure-robed man. The young Star Lord secretly became cautious. His instincts told him that the person before him was not a ruly person. He could not afford to offend him. I come from the lone heaven plane, said the man with a smile. However, the young Star Lord felt chills from this smile. It was like a demon's smile. That was how terrifying it seemed. The lone heaven plane? The young Star Lord muttered. He began to search through his memories as he studied the man. Suddenly, he seemed to think of something. A gleam of light flashed through his eyes, and he said, Are you the heavenly king of azure brilliance of the 4 heavenly kings of the lone heaven plane? It looks like the young Star Lord has heard of me before. Indeed, that is me, the man replied casually before walking over to a chair and sitting down. He studied the majestic and luxurious hall and said, It looks like the young Star Lord is enjoying quite the treatment. Even those old guys from the Four Symbols Alliance have never stayed in such a nice residence. Greeting to the heavenly king of azure brilliance. After receiving confirmation, the young Star Lord immediately became careful. Even though he was the 9 brilliant Star Lord's foster son, He dared not act haughtily when he faced the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance. He had heard of the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance's infamy many times. He was unruly, ruthless, cold-blooded, and merciless. He was known for being a dangerous figure in the Saints' world. Even though he was not one of the most powerful experts, he was one of the worst people to provoke. The Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance possessed great speed, enough for him to cross worlds. There were only a handful of experts across the entire Saints' world that could match his speed. Moreover, he was a person who held on to grudges very much, someone with a very vengeful nature. As a result, the various experts of the Saints' world would try their best to not provoke him, enduring him as much as they could. Even for those who completely overwhelmed the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance in strength, once they fell out and the Heavenly King fled, it was impossible for them to catch up to him. What could they do? All they would be waiting for was the endless retaliation of the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance in the future. As a result, none of the experts who had organizations attached to them really wanted to provoke the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance. On the other hand, the Star Brilliance plane ranked towards the top among the 49 planes of the Saints' world. They were far more powerful than the Cloud plane, filled with sects, clans, and experts. However, there was only his foster father, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord, who could truly take the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance lightly. At the same time, the young Star-Lord had once heard from his foster father that even if he wanted to kill the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance, it would take quite the effort. In order to kill the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance, one needed to be able to catch up to him first. Although his foster father was powerful, renowned in the Saints' world and known as a supreme expert only second to Grand Exalts, he was not as great at pursuing people as experts weaker than him but had grasped the laws of space. As a result, the young Star-Lord was rather fearful of the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance. He could even be described that he rather dreaded the Heavenly King. He dared to offend the Heavenly Palace of Bishing because he believed that Xueqi dared not kill him. After all, the Heavenly Palace of Bishing was not just Xueqi alone. She had to consider for everyone else and consider whether she could stop the 9 Brilliant Star-Lord, or maybe even endure the blood-tier Grand Exalt's wrath. However, the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance was an unruly, fearless existence. If he really angered him, who knows what he could do? Senior Heavenly King, the Four Symbols Alliance is protected by formations now. How did you come in here? The young Star-Lord asked carefully. Although the defenses of this formation is impressive, it's a piece of cake for me to destroy it, and any formation I can destroy easily cannot obstruct me. I can come in and out as I wish. The Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance said like it was no big deal. I've heard many rumors and legends about Senior Heavenly King since a long time ago. Now that I look at it, Senior Heavenly King really lives up to his reputation. May I ask why Senior Heavenly King has suddenly come to find Junior? The young Star-Lord clasped his fist. He seemed like a completely different person from before. I just happened to be passing by. When I heard the 9 Brilliant Star-Lord's foster son was on the Cloud plane, I came in to have a look. But it seems like you've encountered some problems, said the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance. Before the young Star-Lord could reply, he continued, the 9 Brilliant Star-Lord is one of the few supreme experts who have reached the 9th heavenly layer in the Saints' world. If he takes another step forward, he will reach Grand Exalt and become the heavenly ways. He will become a supreme sovereign. He is someone I respect. Since you are the 9 Brilliant Star-Lord's only child, I'll give you this so that you can protect yourself with it. It is also so that I can form a good tie with you early on. As the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance said that, he pointed at the empty space, and an azure feather that was only as long as a finger immediately appeared. It shone with a faint, azure light. It was quite enchanting. This is a life-bound plume. I condensed it using my vital energies and then nurtured it within me for every year. Every single life-bound plume possesses devastating power, equivalent to a full-strength attack from me. Over all these years, I've only nurtured 3 life-bound plumes. Every single one of them are extremely precious. Even my direct disciples won't receive something like that from me. For the sake of the 9 Brilliant Star-Lord, I'll give you a life-bound plume so that you can protect your life with it. The 9 Brilliant Star-Lord is currently in secluded cultivation. If you face danger, he won't be able to save you in time. Thank you, Senior Heavenly King. I will never forget the kindness you have shown today. The young Star-Lord was overjoyed. He quickly accepted the feather carefully. As he stared at the azure feather in his hands, the light in his eyes flickered. Senior Heavenly King, may I ask if this life-bound plume can be used to deal an attack? The Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance smiled mysteriously. Since it can protect you, it can obviously be used to harm people. As long as you don't come across 5th Heavenly Layer Grand Primes or stronger, they'll be heavily injured even if they survive the attack from my life-bound plume. Even against 5th Heavenly Layer Grand Primes, they'll struggle to deal with the life-bound plume as long as they're not like the solitary sword ancestor. Treasure it. What about below Grand Prime? The young Star-Lord continued to ask. It will be certain death for those below Grand Prime. Before he had even finished talking, the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance vanished silently. He left the Four Symbols Alliance without raising anyone's attention. From the very start, none of the ancestors of the Four Symbols Alliance sensed him. Certain death for those below Grand Prime, the young Star-Lord murmured. He was in great joy. The feather from the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance was like someone giving him exactly what he needed when he needed it. Jian Chen's not even a chaotic prime. It really will be at my expense if I use this feather on him. However, Senior Heavenly King said my foster father is in seclusion? That's strange. When I left the Star Brilliance plane, father wasn't in seclusion. Why did he suddenly enter secluded cultivation right after I left? I wonder how long father will remain in seclusion this time. Just when will my training on the cloud plane end? Whatever. I won't worry about it for now. The matter at hand is to make Jian Chen die as soon as possible. This feather should be enough to kill some other members of the martial soul lineage after I kill Jian Chen. The young Star-Lord stowed the feather away and left. With such a powerful trump card in his hand, he became rather impatient to use it. Chapter 2608. Taking action, whether it be the Four Symbols Alliance, the Righteous Alliance, or even the successors of the martial soul lineage, none of them knew the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance had arrived on the cloud plane. It was as if only the young Star-Lord was the only one on the cloud plane who knew. However, nothing was perfect. The child observed all of the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance's actions on the cloud plane, all the way until he left. The child was the Heartless Child from the Myriad Bone Guild. The Heartless Child remained within the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire the entire time. He just sat on the roof of an inn that was extremely far away from the Four Symbols Alliance. He actually gave one of his life-bound plumes away. What is that bird thinking? Does he want to kill Jian Chen using the young Star-Lord? His gaze shifted away from the headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance. Now it was directed to outer space. His gaze was extremely profound, as if the cosmos were reflected in them. Celestial bodies seemed to move through his eyes, interwoven with the laws of the world. His directly stared at the depths of the cosmos, locking onto an azure figure that traveled away with terrifying speed. The azure figure stopped extremely far away from the cloud plane and paid close attention to the cloud plane. They both concealed themselves, but the Heartless Child discovered the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance very easily, while the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance sensed nothing. He did not even know that the Heartless Child had been paying attention to everything he did on the cloud plane, along with what he was doing right now. That bird really is rumored. He's extremely vengeful. He learnt Ming Dong's identity and learnt that the Anata Grand Exalt is still alive, yet he still did not give up on killing Jian Chen. He wants to use the young Star-Lord to kill Jian Chen. However, he probably still doesn't know about Jian Chen's relationship with the Anata Grand Exalt. Jian Chen is the Grand Exalt's fruit of ways, so if he really died here, the bird won't be able to live for very long either. The Heartless Child murmured. He smiled with interest as the intrigue on his face deepened. However, we still need Jian Chen to deal with the crisis of our Myriad Bone Guild. Jian Chen can't die here, though the measly cloud plane seems like it'll be busy. The Heartless Child was at ease. He looked at the cloud plane like he was just a spectator that was waiting for a fascinating show with great interest. In the blink of an eye, it had already been 3 days since the Heaven-Quaking Sect, Taoist Sect of Emergence, and God's Fallen Clan were destroyed. During those 3 days, all 5 regions of the cloud plane were peaceful. Whether it be the Righteous Alliance or the Martial Soul lineage, neither of them did anything to the Four Symbols Alliance. Nothing seemed to happen to the Four Symbols Alliance on the surface. The protective formations remained activated. It shone with a hazy light and possessed earth-shaking energy, hiding everything happening inside and prohibiting anyone from entering or leaving. All the experts of the cloud plane knew that this was just the calm before the storm. The astonishing change that could affect the entire cloud plane or even rewrite history was silently building up under this guise of peace. That was all because the martial soul mountain never left. The illusionary mountain represented the martial soul lineage. As long as the martial soul mountain was present, it meant that the martial soul lineage was still on the cloud plane. Finally, on the 10th day since the three peak organizations were destroyed, the peace on the cloud plane was broken. Many clansmen and disciples surged out from the Tong family, Fire God clan, and Cosmic sect. Under the lead of primordial realm experts, they all surged into divine halls that hovered in the air. Afterwards, these divine halls of various designs and quality landed in the hands of the primordial realm experts. They were taken to the southern region through teleportation formations by these primordial realm experts. Powerful formations enveloped the entire headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance as it shone brightly. The terrifying pulses of energy made it seem impenetrable. Figures appeared outside the formation. The primordial realm experts of the Tong family, Fire God clan, and Cosmic sect all gathered together, ranging from infinite prime elders to grand prime ancestors. At that moment, the three organizations of the Righteous Alliance were basically completely mobilized. Fall into formation. Fall into formation. Fall into formation. At this moment, three people called out, and the divine halls suddenly appeared with the voices. The doors swung open, and the godhood cultivators from the three organizations poured out like floods. As soon as they emerged from the divine hall, they fell into various formations. Powerful energy surged, causing the surroundings to shine with multicolored light. It was quite the sight. This time, the three peak organizations had almost mobilized 200,000 people in total. Any of these organizations had existed for hundreds of thousands of years or maybe even a million years. Their disciples and clansmen amounted to around 1 million or even more. However, most of these clansmen were at the mortal realm, sainthood, and origin realm. There was only a very small fraction who were truly able to reach godhood. As for the people who had reached the primordial realm, there was just a handful of them. As a result, without any exaggeration, all of these cultivators were basically the elites of the three peak organizations. Even the weakest of these people had reached godhood. They've finally come. At the same time, the gentle breeze ancestor and the other grand primes hovered in the air within the protective formations of the Four Symbols Alliance. They watched everything unfold through the formation. They were stern. Luo Mantian and He Dao were among them. The two of them stared outside the formations, looking at the three figures that they had once fought alongside who stood at the front of the army. They experienced a multitude of emotions. Young Star-Lord, our protective formations will be destroyed in the end. Against the combined forces of the martial soul lineage and the Righteous Alliance, there's no chance of victory for us. May I ask if the young Star-Lord has contacted the Star Brilliance plane? Gongji arrived before the young Star-Lord. She was extremely stern. If there are no reinforcements, it's either giving up on the cloud plane completely or death, Wu Lu added. His heart felt heavy. Don't worry. I already have a way to deal with them, the young Star-Lord said confidently. Boom. At this moment, a thunderous rumble rang out. The protective formations of the Four Symbols Alliance shone brightly as the barrier rippled like water. If someone stood outside, they would be able to see an extremely grandiose scene. A powerful beam of energy shot down from outer space. It was just like a bridge of light, piercing through the world and colliding with the formations around the Four Symbols Alliance. This huge beam of energy did not disperse after a single strike. Instead, it remained as if an endless amount of energy in outer space maintained it forever. The martial soul lineage had taken action. On the illusionary martial soul mountain in outer space, Jian Chen stood together with his 7 seniors. They stood in formation together, guiding the power of the mountain soul to attack the formation from the distance. Chapter 2609. Attacking Martial Soul Mountain. The method that the Martial Soul lineage employed to destroy the formations was to deplete the mountain soul's energy along with the energy of the Four Symbols Alliance's formations. The energy of the mountain soul came from the real Martial Soul Mountain. The Martial Soul Mountain was basically a colossal, almost infinite, source of energy, replenishing the mountain soul from an extremely great distance away. As a result, the Martial Soul lineage did not have to worry about depleting too much of their own energy at all. They were now attacking the headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance after all. When the peak organizations fused together to form the Four Symbols Alliance in the past, they had always guarded the southern region. They had already turned the southern region into an impenetrable fortress. This was their final line of defense. It was astonishingly powerful, enough to block the attacks of 3rd Heavenly Layer Grand Primes. They could hold their ground for a while against even 4th Heavenly Layer Grand Primes. As a result, the Martial Soul lineage and the Righteous Alliance did have to pay quite the price to get through the formation forcefully. Moreover, there was going to be a bitter battle after destroying the formation. If they spent too much power on destroying the formation, the Righteous Alliance would definitely suffer extremely severe casualties in the upcoming battle. As a result, attacking the formation was completely left up to the Martial Soul lineage so that they could retain the prowess of the Righteous Alliance as much as possible, reducing the future casualties to a minimum. After all, the Righteous Alliance was no longer the dominating force that possessed an absolute advantage over the Four Symbols Alliance anymore with Luo Mantian, Gu Li, and He Dao's betrayals. As a result, they had to rely on the Martial Soul lineage to destroy the Four Symbols Alliance. As the Martial Soul lineage attacked the formation, the 3 Grand Primes of the Righteous Alliance all looked at the huge beam of energy from the Mountain Soul as well. Their faces all hardened when they sensed the terrifying energy within it. Have you sensed it? The Martial Soul lineage seems to be using the energy of the Martial Soul Mountain when they're attacking the formation. That way, they won't have to expend anything to launch such a powerful attack. The Martial Soul lineage really deserves their reputation. Although they don't have any Grand Primes, they're actually much more powerful than many peak organizations in the Saints' world. With the Martial Soul lineage, the Four Symbols Alliance will definitely be destroyed. Their protective formations are powerful, but under the endless attack from the Martial Soul lineage, they will deplete their energy reserve severely. Let's see how much longer they can last. The 3 ancestors of the Righteous Alliance conversed secretly. At the same time, armies had assembled within the protective formations of the Four Symbols Alliance as well. All the cultivators, regardless of strength, stood in formations, ready for battle at any time. However, their morale was clearly low. The formation's energy is depleting far too quickly. If this continues, we won't be able to last much longer. The Gentle Breeze ancestor stared outside the formation and said sternly. Even though their protective formations only rippled under the Martial Soul Mountain's attack, the Martial Soul Mountain maintained the beam of energy the entire time. As a result, the formation was constantly under attack, and its energy would constantly decrease. If this continued, the amount of energy depleted in a single day would be extremely terrifying. There's no need to worry. Just find a way to draw out Jian Chen. I have a way of turning the situation around, said the young Star Lord. He stared at the armies of the Righteous Alliance outside and remained extremely composed. Even though the situation right before him was completely against the Four Symbols Alliance, the young Star Lord showed no fear at all. He was the child of the 9 brilliant Star Lord. He was confident that even if the Four Symbols Alliance was destroyed, the Righteous Alliance and Martial Soul lineage would not touch a single hair on him. All right. The Gentle Breeze ancestor accepted what he said. He glanced at Wu Lu, Gong Ji, Changfeng Yun, Luo Mantian, and He Dao and said, "This is a battle of life and death this time. None of us can afford to hold back. Everyone, please receive the opponents with me." With that, the 6 Grand Primes of the Four Symbols Alliance flew out from the protective formations at the same time. However, their targets were not the 3 experts of the Righteous Alliance. Instead, they charged directly towards outer space and headed for the Martial Soul Mountain. "Collapse their formation and force out Jian Chen," said the Gentle Breeze ancestor gently. He felt the same towards Jian Chen as before. He was someone best left alone. However, now that he had run out of choices, combined with the pressure of the current situation, he was forced to abide to the young Star Lord. The 6 Grand Primes of the Four Symbols Alliance set out together. Immediately, pressure flooded the surroundings as terrifying pulses of energy radiated from them. It shook up the space there and distorted the galaxies. With a single step, they arrived before the illusionary Martial Soul Mountain. They did not scatter, remaining together. They all drew their various god artifacts and tremendous energy surged into their weapons, causing them to shine brightly. Crack, crack. The space around them constantly shattered. This was space collapsing. Swathes of space were reduced to darkness as the stars vanished. The 6 of them still had not used their full strength. Just the energy pulses from the god artifacts were devastating enough. Flawless sky. At this moment, a bellow rang out. Luo Mantian struck out first. He wielded a medium-quality god artifact, directly using a god-tier battle skill to stab at the martial soul mountain. As he stabbed out, a huge crack in space appeared. The sword easily ripped through space as it created a deep, green sword chi that shoot towards the martial soul mountain with terrifying energy and pressure. Lightning of the heavenly ways. He Dao called out as well. He held a wooden staff in his hands. It was laced with the presence of time and was also a medium-quality god artifact. He extended the wooden staff in his hand, and a pressure immediately permeated the surroundings. Terrifying energy and power of laws rose up before condensing into a bolt of lightning in the end. It shot towards the martial soul mountain as a flash. The laws he comprehended had nothing to do with lightning. It was purely because of the god-tier battle skill that it was like lightning. Life and death exists in the world. The world gives birth to you, but I bring death upon you. Gongji muttered softly. A grey presence permeated her face. At that moment, she radiated with a heavy presence of death as an invisible pulse appeared from her body and expanded towards the martial soul mountain. Wherever the invisible pulse passed by, everything seemed to wither up, including outer space. It was the laws of death. Gongji happened to comprehend the laws of death. Chapter 2610. Killing Luo Mantian, 1. The 6 Grand Primes of the Four Symbols Alliance struck out simultaneously. They all unleashed their full strength, using various god-tier battle skills and terrifying secret techniques. They possessed utterly frightening power, devastating the space there, seemingly reducing it to chaos. All of their attacks were concentrated on a single point, so their power did not scatter. It all landed on the martial soul mountain. The 6 of them could tell very clearly that the formation created by the 8 successors of the martial soul lineage only expended the energy of the illusionary martial soul mountain. It basically placed no burden on the 8 of them. As a result, even if they maintained their attack on the formations of the Four Symbols Alliance for nights and days on end, it would not take much toll on them at all. However, the Four Symbols Alliance would be forced to expend tremendous amounts of energy defending. They would be forced into an extremely reactive situation. As a result, not only did they plan on destroying the martial soul lineage's formation this time and draw out Jian Chen according to the young Star Lord's plan, they also wanted to combine their strength to destroy the martial soul mountain in an unexpected fashion. Once the illusionary martial soul mountain collapsed, the martial soul lineage would lose their never-ending energy source. Their protective formations would be able to last for even longer. The faces of Tong Wuming, Lian Wuji, and Zhou Dao, who had remained on guard the entire time, sank when they saw the actions of the 6 experts. Oh no! Stop them! They're trying to destroy the martial soul mountain. Don't let them succeed. The 3 of them called out. With a single movement, they appeared in outer space immediately and did their best to stop the Grand Primes from the Four Symbols Alliance. Although they could still get through the formations if they worked with the martial soul lineage once the martial soul mountain was destroyed, it would require much more effort. However, it was already too late for them. The 6 Grand Primes of the Four Symbols Alliance had launched a completely unexpected attack that was finished in an instant. Even if the 3 of them wanted to stop an attack or two, they could not. They could only watch the 6 powerful attacks that they would require their full strength to receive land on the martial soul mountain. Haha, the power of the mountain soul can even endure quite a while against attacks from a 5th heavenly layer Grand Prime, let alone you. Can the 6 of you reach the level of 5th heavenly layer Grand Primes when you combine your strength? Han Zong laughed aloud from the mountain soul. As he chuckled, a barrier of light rose up from the mountain soul, enveloping the entire mountain. Boom, 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 boom. The 6 terrifying attacks landed on the screen of light, but it only rippled slightly before returning to normal. The defenses are far too powerful. How is that possible? This isn't even the true martial soul mountain. It's only the rumored illusionary projection that the martial soul lineage conjures with a portion of the martial soul mountain's power. Just the projection is so powerful. The martial soul lineage is simply too terrifying. This sight utterly stunned the 6 peak experts. They were dumbfounded as disbelief filled their faces. The martial soul lineage is actually so terrifying. Tong Wuming, Lian Wuji, and Zhou Dao, who had made their way over, were stunned by this sight as well. These ancestors of the Cloud Plane did not possess a lot of information on the martial soul lineage. Most of them read about them in records or heard of them from rumors. Such sources would never go into great detail, making what they knew extremely limited. As a result, they were very shocked. Since you've come out yourselves, come fight. Han Zong stood up. His presence climbed. He had already left the mountain, charging towards the 6 experts of the Four Symbols Alliance. Junior brothers and sister, stay here. I'll go out and try them. Chu Jian also stood up and emerged from the formaton. His presence billowed as he made his way out whilst laughing aloud. We don't even need to use the martial soul array against them. Since they've chosen to come out, we'll slaughter them on the spot. In the end, Yu Chao left as well. The 3 most powerful experts of the martial soul lineage had come out together. Their appearances immediately made a chill run down the spines of the 6 experts. They all became extremely stern. They felt great fear towards the martial soul lineage. Kill! The gentle breeze ancestor called out. He equipped a set of god artifact armor. Fully geared, he went to receive Han Zong. Chu Jian faced Luo Mantian, while Yu Chao faced Gong Ji. Chong Feng Yun, He Yi Dao, and Wu Lu faced Tong Wuming, Lai Yan Wuji, and Zhou Ji Dao. Immediately, deafening booms rang out in outer space. The various laws mixed and mingled, forming a devastating power with all the violent energy. It caused the stars to tremble. The difference in strength between the 3 experts of the Righteous Alliance and Chong Feng Yun, He Yi Dao, and Wu Lu was not particularly great. They were basically equally matched. Even if their battle prowess differed slightly, the battle would not end quickly. However, Luo Mantian and Gong Ji were not as fortunate. They faced Chu Jian and Yu Chao of the martial soul lineage. As soon as they began fighting, their souls were stunned by the secret techniques of the martial soul lineage. They lost the upper hand. Luo Mantian and Gong Ji both became rather pale. They gritted their teeth and endured. Blood oozed from the corner of their mouths. The blood did not come from physical wounds. Instead, they had bit their tongues to stimulate their awareness when their souls were bombarded. In the battle last time, they outnumbered the martial soul lineage 2-1, so they could slowly recover against the soul attacks of the martial soul lineage with someone else sharing the burden. Now that they fought alone, they could only depend on themselves. Of course, they had a way of dealing with the attacks that did not really work, and that was immediately pulling away from their opponent once their souls were attacked. They only needed 5 seconds to recover. Seniors, let's assist second senior brother in killing Luo Mantian, Jian Chen said sternly on the martial soul mountain. On the current battlefield, the person he wanted to kill the most was Luo Mantian. Not only was he the first person to launch a sneak attack on the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak, but he had used a dagger imbued with the laws of Cruzes as well, bringing great danger to the Peak Lord. That was the reason why the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak did not take part in the battle this time. Instead, he remained on the Heavens Link Peak to suppress the curse as much as he could. No one objected to Jian Chen's request. Very soon, the situation on the Martial Soul Mountain changed again. The 5 of them fell into another formation that locked onto Luo Mantian. In the end, a powerful beam of light shot out. Luo Mantian had always remained wary of the Martial Soul Mountain. As soon as he sensed their actions as well as the beam of light that shot towards him, his expression immediately changed. He dared not take it on forcefully. He did not attempt to block it. Instead, with a single movement, he directly hid into a spatial crack behind him. The laws were incomplete, and the elements were reversed within the spatial crack. Various violent streams of energy wreaked havoc as chaotic time formed vortices that rapidly revolved. It was so dangerous inside that even primordial realm experts needed to be careful when they set foot in there. If they were careless, they could even die. In the past, when Jian Chen faced the pursuit of the Azure Peng King, the only reason why he could rampage through there fearlessly was because he had the Anata Tower. As Luo Mantian fled into the spatial crack, the beam of light from the Martial Soul Mountain entered right behind him as well. However, as soon as the beam of energy entered the spatial crack, the terrifying shockwaves destabilized the interior of the crack. Just like a domino effect, all the chaotic streams of energy in the entire crack became extremely violent. Temporal vortices rapidly swept through the surroundings. The beam of energy from the Martial Soul Mountain was rapidly weakened. It grew dimmer and dimmer before colliding with a temporal vortex. As if it had gone through endless weakening, it dispersed into nothingness. Luo Mantian successfully dodged the attack. Do you think you're safe just by fleeing there? Afterwards, Chu Jian entered the spatial crack as well. His presence surged, and with a wave of his hand, he destroyed the chaotic streams of energy near him. He began fighting Luo Mantion again with his sword in hand. Chapter 26:11. Killing Luo Mantion. 2. Chu Jian and Luo Mantion were embroiled in an intense battle within the spatial crack. As a result, the region within several 100,000 kilometers in the spatial crack surged as they fought. Powerful, terrifying streams of energy surged about. Under the influence of the energy, the temporal vortices began to approach one another slowly. When two temporal vortices collided, they would either mutually annihilate or be devoured by one of the temporal vortices, making it even more powerful. Within this special space, Chu Jian and Luo Mantion had to dodge these temporal vortices as they fought. With their current level of cultivation, they could ignore the streams of energy, but they had to be extremely careful about these temporal vortices. These temporal vortices contained the laws of time. The flow of time would vary from vortex to vortex. Within some powerful temporal vortices, a split second inside could be equivalent to millions of years, tens of millions of years, or even longer. Moreover, the flow of time was not just forwards. It could regress as well. If it advanced forwards, it would be rather difficult for them to pose any particular harm, seeing how they managed to gain eternal life with their great realms of cultivation. But if they regressed by 1,000,000 years or even 10 million years, it would be equivalent to a regression in cultivation. Martial soul lineage, the whole matter still hasn't reached a point of no return. So why must you force us so bitterly like this, trying to kill us all? Why don't we both take a step back? That way, you can save your relationship with the young Star Lord from worsening any further. Luo Mantion stared at Chu Jian emotionlessly and called out. His armor shone with dazzling light as energy condensed around him, almost to a point where it was tangible. Even though his cultivation completely exceeded Chu Jian's, Luo Mantion's hands were completely tied against martial soul force. What was even more terrifying was that every single move and attack from members of the martial soul lineage would possess a sliver of martial soul force. Even though it was not as powerful as the martial soul force in secret techniques, they clashed at lightning speed with their current level of cultivation. They could exchange hundreds of blows in a few seconds. As the martial soul force accumulated from all those attacks, Luo Mantion would be in great pain even with his cultivation as a second heavenly layer Grand Prime. It would take a heavy toll on his soul. Moreover, he had to endure secret techniques from the martial soul mountain from time to time. These secret techniques were the truly terrifying aspect of the martial soul lineage. Every single technique possessed the incredible power to instantly heavily injure or kill opponents of the same level. Although it was very difficult for Luo Mantion's soul to be heavily injured as a second heavenly layer Grand Prime, it could stun him momentarily and bring on great agony. As a result, Luo Mantion developed the thought that it would be for the best if they could just stop fighting. Chu Jian sneered in response to Luo Mantion. You're called Luo Mantion, right? That's pretty funny. If it were over some other matters, our martial soul lineage might not bicker with you as much. After all, the young Star Lord's foster father, the 9 brilliant Star Lord, does carry some weight in the Saints' world. Unfortunately, the matter this time threatened 8th junior brother's life. If we had come a little later, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Who knows how long it has been since 8 successors have appeared for our martial soul lineage, yet we almost lost a junior brother on the cloud plane. This grievance has already reached the point of no return, so even if we offend the young Star Lord, we will kill you all. And just the young Star Lord isn't enough to attract any attention from us. In reality, our martial soul lineage fears no one from the Star Brilliance plane aside from the 9 brilliant Star Lord. Chu Jian's voice rang out with firm determination. The killing intent was pressing, making Luo Mantion become extremely stern. Isn't Jian Chen still alive? He's not even injured, so why must you do this? Luo Mantion continued. Chu Jian's battle prowess was just too great. He possessed quite a few treasures on him as well, and he possessed martial soul force. All that awaited Luo Mantion was defeat if they kept fighting. The more drawn out a battle against a member of the martial soul lineage was, the worse it would be for him. Luo Mantion, do you think our martial soul lineage can just be provoked like that? Chu Jian sneered. He launched the soul-destroying technique and immediately made Luo Mantion quiver and grunt. The agony from his soul made Luo Mantion temporarily blank out. However, Luo Mantion already had experience in dealing with these attacks. From the moment his soul began to hurt, he quickly flew backwards instinctually, pulling away from Chu Jian. Do you think you're safe with just that? Chu Jian sneered coldly. He suddenly struck out. The sword in his hand exploded with sword chi as he swung it towards Luo Mantian. Luo Mantian was several dozen kilometers away from him. A huge temporal vortex spun there. Originally, the temporal vortex moved away from Luo Mantian such that it was impossible for it to come in contact with him. However, when Chu Jian slashed out, the power that had erupted made the trajectory of the temporal vortex change. It rapidly approached Luo Mantian. If he was still clear-minded, Luo Mantian could have dodged the huge temporal vortex easily. However, he had temporarily lost sense of the outside world due to the soul-destroying technique. He failed to sense the temporal vortex's approach at all. That was not all. Just when Luo Mantian was about to fall into the temporal vortex, Chu Jian used another secret technique. He suddenly pressed his finger onto his forehead, and his eyes became pitch black. At the same time, Chu Jian's martial soul force depleted at a shocking rate. In just a single instance, half of Chu Jian's 9th heavenly layer chaotic prime martial soul force was gone. Even for Chu Jian, it was rather difficult for him to endure losing half of his martial soul force in a single moment. A sliver of exhaustion appeared on his face. However, with the appearance of exhaustion, a sense of terrifying danger appeared. It was enough to cause despair for 9th heavenly layer chaotic primes, where even the face's 1st heavenly layer grand primes would harden as they faced it. Heaven-severing technique. Chu Jian suddenly pointed at Luo Mantian with the finger he had pressed against his forehead. With that, half of Chu Jian's martial soul force immediately surged out. A flash of light that only members of the martial soul lineage could see appeared. It turned into an invisible blade, descending onto Luo Mantian's head in an instant. It directly landed on his soul. That slash seemed to split the world in half, where even all the laws of the world could not stop it. As a result, the slash directly broke through all of Luo Mantian's energy defenses, ignoring the god artifact on Luo Mantian and slashing down viciously onto Luo Mantian's soul. It was no longer as simple as a quiver and a grunt for Luo Mantian now that he had taken on the heaven-severing technique. Instead, he directly cried out miserably. His face immediately paled, without a trace of blood left. Blood spurted out from all of his facial openings. His soul became extremely dim. It seemed like it was on the verge of collapse. Chu Jian's heaven-severing technique was just too powerful. No one at the same level of cultivation could endure it. Even 1st heavenly layer grand primes would face a chance of dying. Even though Luo Mantian had managed to endure it with his 2nd heavenly layer soul, he clearly still paid a heavy price. Afterwards, Luo Mantian clutched his head firmly and fell into the huge temporal vortex. If he were at his peak condition, he could use his powerful cultivation to forcefully break out. However, his soul was now more injured than it had ever been before, almost at the edge of unconsciousness. His mind had even descended into a mess, so he could not prepare at all when he fell into the temporal vortex. The temporal vortex spun rapidly. The laws of time in there were extremely chaotic. Luo Mantian's god artifact rapidly dimmed, and even the pulse from his cultivation became weaker and weaker. In just a few seconds, his god artifact returned to its original state. Clearly, there was no energy left within the armor at all. Who knows whether Luo Mantian advanced or regressed in time during those few seconds. All of the energy in the god artifact was gone, and even the power of his cultivation vanished. At this moment, a rope appeared in Chu Jian's hands. It was a low-quality god artifact. He tossed it into the temporal vortex and wrapped it around Luo Mantian. As soon as the rope entered the temporal vortex, it immediately began to dim at a visible rate. The energy within the rope leaked away at an extremely terrifying rate. Chu Jian was stern as he looked at the rope in his hands. Without any hesitation at all, he pulled it hard and forcefully yanked Luo Mantian out of the temporal vortex. Luo Mantian was a grand prime. He possessed eternal life, so he did not lose anything obvious in the temporal vortex. However, his god artifact had completely run out of energy. Even all of the power of his cultivation had been sapped. His cultivation did not regress. However, it was very clear that the tremendous energy within him had all been drained away, as if he had just experienced an endless amount of time. However, his soul just happened to remain the same as when he fell into the temporal vortex. It did not go through any obvious changes in there. Your soul has the imprint of ways. Clearly, this temporal vortex hasn't reached the level where it can destroy the souls of grand primes, or it would have been impossible for your soul to last until now. Chu Jian stared at Luo Mantion. Luo Mantion still had not recovered yet. Without the defenses of his god artifact and with his power completely sapped, he posed no threat to Chu Jian anymore. Swish! In the next moment, Chu Jian stabbed out and piercing Luo Mantion's forehead, killing him on the spot. Chapter 26:12. Before the final battle, the spatial crack where Chu Jian and Luo Mantion fought had not closed up, so all the peak experts saw exactly what happened in there. As a result, when the Grand Primes from both alliances saw Luo Mantion die, they were all shocked. They were thrown into emotional turmoil. Although 2 Grand Primes had died in the battle before, they were only first Heavenly Layer Grand Primes. Zhang Hu, in particular, had only reached Grand Prime recently, making him one of the weakest existences present. Luo Mantion was a reliable expert who had become a Grand Prime many years ago. He had reached the 2nd Heavenly Layer. His death naturally caused quite the impact to everyone. Luo Mantion is actually dead. He Dao, who had betrayed the righteous alliance with Luo Mantion, experienced strewn feelings. There was some sorrow. In just half a month after leaving the righteous alliance, Gu Li died first, and then Luo Mantion now. The righteous alliance, which should have been destroyed, already instead possesses the absolute advantage now. Was our choice back then really wrong? He Dao's heart weighed heavily. This was the first time he had begun to regret their betrayal. However, when he saw the young Star Lord below, he could not help but calm down. He thought, so what if Jian Chen has the support of the martial soul lineage? Behind us is the young Star Lord who represents the Star Brilliance plane. The young Star Lord still hasn't done anything right now, so he's probably preparing something. I believe it will be shocking the moment the young Star Lord takes action. He'll be able to turn the situation around in a single stroke. Chu Jian had already emerged from the spatial crack with Luo Mantion's corpse, returning to the battlefield. He knew Jian Chen required a large number of corpses, so he just tossed the corpse onto the mountain soul. Jian Chen rejoiced on the mountain soul. He caught Luo Mantion's corpse with surging emotions. He now possessed 3 Grand Prime corpses. They came from Zhang Hu, Gu Li, and Luo Mantion. Chu Jian did not take Luo Mantion's space ring. The successors of the martial soul lineage all knew that it was very difficult for the wealth of these weaker Grand Primes to interest Han Zong, Chu Jian, and Yu Chao. As a result, he left everything in the space ring to the 5 of them to share and divide. However, it was not the time to check the contents of the space ring. Jian Chen stowed Luo Mantion's corpse away before falling into formation again. This time, let's kill He Dao. None of those who had betrayed the righteous alliance can be spared, said Jian Chen as he stared coldly at He Dao as he fought against Zhou Zhidao. He Dao and Zhou Zhidao were both first Heavenly Layer Grand Primes, so they were equally matched. They could do nothing to each other. However, when Jian Chen looked at He Dao sensed it. He made eye contact with Jian Chen from afar. When he saw the coldness in Jian Chen's eyes, his heart immediately shivered. He knew he had become the next target. The deaths of Zhang Hu, Gu Li, and Luo Mantion had an extremely great impact on He Dao such that his fear towards the martial soul lineage had reached an absolute maximum. As a result, when he sensed Jian Chen's gaze, he did not hesitate at all. He immediately abandoned Zhou Zhidao, turning around to flee. Grand Primes moved extremely quickly. In the blink of an eye, He Dao vanished from outer space, returning to the protective formations of the Four Symbols Alliance. The protective formation could hide anything, whether it be presence or the scenery inside, from the outside. As a result, as soon as he entered the protective formation, it was impossible to find a target even if members of the martial soul lineage wanted to launch attacks with martial soul force. Retreat! He Dao's flight was followed up with an order from the Gentle Breeze ancestor. They were never the martial soul lineage's opponent. Now that Luo Mantion had died and He Dao had fled, their opponents had freed up 2 more people. If they kept on fighting, their defeat would only come faster. At that moment, the Grand Primes of the Four Symbols Alliance all vanished from outer space. They returned to the protective formations. God damn it. Martial soul force is just too hard to guard against. The power of my soul drains at an exorbitant rate when I fight against a member of the martial soul lineage. My soul has to get shaken up from time to time as well, Gongji said with a pale face as soon as she returned to the protective formations. Her face was extremely sunken and had a sliver of exhaustion. It's detestable. I'm a mighty second heavenly layer Grand Prime. Yet I've been reduced to such a sorry shape by a ninth heavenly layer chaotic prime kid. Something as strange as the martial soul lineage shouldn't exist in the world. Luo Mantion died so quickly. We really don't have any chance at victory now. The gentle breeze ancestor sighed gently. He was solemn. The martial soul lineage was just too powerful. They only had 3 ninth heavenly layer chaotic primes, yet they beat up the grand primes of the Four Symbols Alliance into such sorry shapes. It embittered the gentle breeze ancestor. Where is Jian Chen? Why hasn't Jian Chen come out? Didn't I tell you to draw out Jian Chen? There's so many of you, yet you can't even complete such a small task. The young Star-Lord arrived with an ugly expression as he scolded them. The young Star-Lord was extremely impatient about killing Jian Chen. Now that he had finally obtained a trump card that could kill Jian Chen, he was unwilling to wait a second longer. According to his belief, after he used the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance's feather to kill Jian Chen, there would still be some spare power that could slaughter the martial soul lineage. He believed that as soon as he used the feather, he would instantly turn the tables for the Four Symbols Alliance. This feather is my greatest trump card for killing Jian Chen, so I can't reveal it beforehand. Otherwise, once Jian Chen becomes wary, success will be difficult. The young Star-Lord was extremely vexed. Boom! At this moment, a deafening rumble rang out. The earth shook and so did the protective formation around the Four Symbols Alliance. It exploded with dazzling light. After that, booms constantly rang out. It became more powerful and terrifying with each coming boom. Just the sound itself was devastating. Oh no, the Righteous Alliance has begun attacking. The expressions of the experts from the Four Symbols Alliance changed. Energy surged and light filled the air outside the formation. The entire cloud plane was affected, alarming countless people. All the elite experts of the Tong family, Cosmic Sect, and Fire God clan had fallen into formations. Under the orders of their ancestors, they used up as much energy as they needed to launch forceful attacks at the protective barrier of the Four Symbols Alliance. Even the ancestors had taken action. Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji all wielded god artifacts, radiating with alarming power. They attacked the formation as well, where every single move and strike was devastating. They caused space to sink. As Luo Mantion had died in the battle before, the Four Symbols Alliance's power had decreased again. As a result, the difference between the two sides had widened once more, which was why the 3 Grand Primes no longer cared about wasting some energy. With the assistance of the martial soul lineage, there was no chance for the Four Symbols Alliance to achieve victory even if the 3 of them did not fight. The members of the martial soul lineage returned to the martial soul mountain. They used the same method as before, drawing out the power of the mountain soul to waste away the energy of the formation in the least costly manner. Immediately, the 3 Grand Primes and all the Chaotic Primes, Infinite Primes, and Godhood cultivators from the 3 organizations launched a relentless barrage of attacks. The power of the protective formations of the Four Symbols Alliance depleted at an unbelievable rate. Chapter 26:13. The 2 emperors. The interior of the Four Symbols Alliance shook like there was a huge earthquake. Even Godhood cultivators could not help but sway as they stood inside. Fortunately, the headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance was covered with formations. Under the protection of these formations, the violent shaking failed to create any major damage. Basically, all the forces of the Four Symbols Alliance were gathered in there right now. They all stared at the formation that erupted with dazzling light in the sky silently. The atmosphere seemed extremely heavy. At this rate of attack, we probably can't even last half a month, He Dao said sternly. As he looked at the experts of the Four Symbols Alliance who could only hide within the formations, he was filled with mixed emotions. Let alone half a month, even 7 days would be very difficult. After all, there are 3 Grand Primes out there, coupled with the combined attacks from many Chaotic Primes, Infinite Primes, and Godhood cultivators, Gongji said with a darkened face. She had become filled with anger over their current predicament. She glanced past the young Star-Lord perhaps out of coincidence and showed displeasure for the first time. The Four Symbols Alliance had already entered such dire straits, yet the Star Brilliance plane still had not sent reinforcements. From how the young Star-Lord acted, it seemed like he did not ask for reinforcements at all. This made Gongji extremely vexed. Organize the retreat and activate the interplanar teleportation formation. Send the people who have some talent to other planes. If we really become utterly doomed, We have to leave behind some survivors for our clans or sects at the very least. Moreover, pour all the divine crystals and items we have accumulated over the years that can support formations into the formations. Buy as much time as we can. The gentle breeze ancestor passed down an order helplessly. His order immediately led to a disturbance in the Four Symbols Alliance. Many of them paled, as the order meant that the Four Symbols Alliance was truly done for. The ancestors of the Four Symbols Alliance were preparing for its destruction. Young Star-Lord, the only reason why our Four Symbols Alliance faces its current predicament is because of you. Our Four Symbols Alliance no longer possesses any power to use against the Martial Soul lineage and the Righteous Alliance. It has already become like this, so are you really going to do nothing? Wu Lu asked sternly. The young Star-Lord's behavior almost made Wu Lu lose his patience. He was no longer as polite to the young Star-Lord anymore. Humph! What are you worrying for? Aren't I still here? We still haven't even reached the final moment yet. The young Star-Lord frowned and said with some irritation, the only people you can blame is yourselves. I told you to draw out Jian Chen. As long as Jian Chen came out, the whole matter would be resolved. In the end, so many of you went out and one even died, yet you still failed to draw out Jian Chen. Whose fault can it be? The Four Symbols Alliance had already arranged their retreat. They began choosing their talented juniors to send away from the Cloud Plain. Two old men who were great elders in the Four Symbols Alliance secretly sighed when they witnessed this. They took out a jade slip and began a secret conversation. The two old men were chaotic primes. They were the two ancestral emperors who managed to survive the various battles with the Righteous Alliance after the Blood Sun Empire yielded to the Four Symbols Alliance. At the same time, the dragon-robed Blood Emperor stood atop the Imperial Palace in the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire. He stared in the direction of the Four Symbols Alliance as he was extremely stern and filled with worry. Although the Blood Sun Empire was an organization that belonged to the Four Symbols Alliance, the Righteous Alliance never took them seriously. After all, in the eyes of the three peak organizations of the Righteous Alliance, the Blood Sun Empire really was just a slightly larger ant despite being the everlasting empire that seemed to control the southern region. As a result, the Blood Sun Empire did not suffer when the enemy attacked the headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance this time. Suddenly, the Blood Emperor's expression changed. With a flip of his hand, a jade slip suddenly appeared. The Blood Emperor's expression changed rapidly when he looked at the jade slip. He seemed to become much older. He gave off a presence of decline. The ancestral emperors are actually using my bloodline plan. Is the Four Symbols Alliance really done for? Will our Blood Sun Empire really be destroyed? The Blood Emperor seemed to lose all his strength at that moment. He collapsed onto his bottom as his eyes became lost. But very soon, he stood up again, albeit shakily. He called for the people of the imperial family in a majestic hall. Very soon, over 100 people had gathered there. None of them seemed old. They were all the cream of the crop. As an everlasting empire that had existed for 1,000,000 years, the Blood Sun Empire had at least several tens of thousand members of the imperial family, yet there were only around 100 people that the Blood Emperor had called for. That was more than enough to indicate just how great their statuses were. All of them knelt on the ground politely in the majestic hall, paying their respects to the Blood Emperor. They were all unsettled and uneasy. Now, all of them knew that the Righteous Alliance was attacking the Four Symbols Alliance. The Four Symbols Alliance faced destruction and had lost several Grand Primes. The fate of the Four Symbols Alliance would directly affect the fate of their Blood Sun Empire, so these esteemed members of the imperial family basically passed every day in worry, year after year. The 9th Prince, who had almost destroyed the Tian Yuan clan, happened to be among them. However, the 9th Prince had already lost his vigor and haughtiness from the past. The Four Symbols Alliance won't be able to survive. The ancestral emperors have ordered us to use the bloodline plan. You are the future of our Blood Sun Empire. If the Blood Sun Empire is destroyed, there will be a day when you can rise up and rebuild our Blood Sun Empire. The Blood Emperor seemed to be in ruins. It was like he had used up all his strength to say that. Afterwards, he looked at the 9th Prince and said, "The Blood Sun Empire will probably vanish, so there's no need to pay attention to the 10,000 years agreement with the Xi Empire. You should go as well. Don't disappoint your father." "Thank you for a second chance, father." The 9th Prince rejoiced in excitement. "I don't care about the others, but the 9th Prince must remain, or none of you will be leaving here today." At this moment, A dignified voice boomed out. A figure appeared out of nowhere in the majestic hall. He was a middle-aged man. He also wore dragon robes and possessed a dignified bearing, that of a ruler's. He did not stand on the ground. Instead, he hovered in the air, slightly higher than the Blood Emperor on the throne. He looked down on the Blood Emperor from above. The Blood Emperor's expression changed several times with the person's appearance. It became extremely sunken, but it also became filled with powerlessness. The Blood Emperor sucked in a deep breath and said sternly, "Shi Emperor, I never thought you would actually come personally." He was the Emperor of the Shi Empire, Shi Ziyun. He directly intruded upon the imperial palace of the Blood Sun Empire, appearing in this throne room in an ostentatious manner. Chapter 26:14. Gong Sunji's arrival. Looking at the Shi Emperor, who had suddenly appeared in the throne room, all the members of the imperial family were frightened and furious at the same time. They also felt slightly aggrieved. The Blood Sun Empire and the Shi Empire were both everlasting empires on the Cloud Plain. They both possessed great territory such that they were always equally matched in terms of both strength and status. Yet now, as the Emperor of the Shi Empire, the Shi Emperor had actually appeared in the sacred throne room of the Blood Sun Empire uninvited, and he wanted to cut off the Blood Sun Empire's path of retreat right from the start. This was not as simple as provocation. In the eyes of some of the people there, this had become blasphemy towards the Blood Sun Empire. As the everlasting empire that ruled over the southern region, they had now declined to a state where they would feel powerless over the Shi Emperor's direct threats. Some of the people there could not help but feel sorrow. Even the Blood Emperor felt extremely aggrieved. Shi Empire, the Righteous Alliance and the Four Symbols Alliance are at war with one another right now. As a member of the Righteous Alliance, not only has your Shi Empire not supported the Righteous Alliance, but you even have the time to interfere with minor matters of our Blood Sun Empire. Your Shi Empire really does have nothing better to do, the Blood Emperor said emotionlessly and extremely sternly. The battle in 10,000 years has to do with yours desire and faith in cultivation. It's not a small matter. The Shi Empire waved his hand, and a dragon's throne immediately appeared out of nowhere. He just sat in the seat in the air, hovering over 30 meters above the ground. Perhaps out of pure coincidence, he remained a head higher than the Blood Emperor the entire time. As for the war between the Righteous Alliance and Four Symbols Alliance, our Shi Empire no longer has to interfere. The Righteous Alliance has given our Shi Empire the order to guard the northern region. The Shi Empire spoke extremely indifferently, taking the Blood Emperor lightly. Even though they technically possessed the same status, both being emperors of everlasting empires, the Shi Empire was a chaotic prime in terms of strength, while the Blood Emperor was only an infinite prime. Moreover, he was an early infinite prime. As a result, a difference still existed between their statuses. The Blood Emperor remained silent. The war between the two alliances affected basically every major organization on the Cloud Plain. Let alone the two surviving ancestral emperors of his Blood Sun Empire. Even all the chaotic primes from the everlasting empires in the eastern and western regions had been mobilized. Only the northern region had not sent a single soldiers. The Blood Emperor knew exactly what that meant. It did not mean that the Shi Empire had fallen out of favor with the Righteous Alliance. Instead, it meant the exact opposite. The Righteous Alliance was protecting the Shi Empire, preventing them from taking part so that they would not suffer casualties. Clearly, the Righteous Alliance was giving the Shi Empire special treatment due to the Tian Yuan clan. As for the ninth prince, all of his joy and excitement from earlier had completely vanished. His face was ashen, filled with despair. He knew that since the Shi Emperor had come, he definitely had no chance at leaving the Cloud Plain. His fate would be waiting for the 10,000 years to end and then fighting the princess of the Shi Empire. He even knew that he would definitely suffer defeat in the battle in 10,000 years' time. There was no chance for him to achieve victory. Even if he broke through to Infinite Prime, even if he possessed strength that could crush the princess in an overwhelming manner, he would still be the one dead in the end. Why did I provoke the Tian Yuan clan? Didn't Jian Chen just want the Flower of Ways? I could have just given it to him? But why did I try to retaliate by attacking the Tian Yuan clan? Not just retaliate, why did I want to kill off the entire Tian Yuan clan? If I hadn't tried to kill the entire Tian Yuan clan, I wouldn't have offended the princess of the Shi Empire, and I would not be suffering a fate like this today. The ninth prince was filled with regret. At that moment, he wished so much to turn back time and redo everything. In the end, the Blood Emperor gave in. He followed through with the She Emperor's request, leaving the ninth prince behind. The Four Symbols Alliance was waning, so the Blood Sun Empire no longer had the confidence to confront the She Empire. It was also at this moment that the rarely used interplanar teleportation in a colossal city within the central city suddenly lit up. A great power surged forth, immediately attracting the attention of everyone in the surroundings. It's the interplanar teleportation formation. It's said that this teleportation formation can only be activated with colored divine crystals. That's something that only primordial realm experts possess. The teleportation formation has been activated. It looks like there's going to be more people coming from other planes. They must be important. It's extremely likely for them to be primordial realm experts. Everyone move, don't block their path. The cultivators in the surroundings burst into discussion. All of them stood with their eyes wide open as they stared at the teleportation formation with deep curiosity. A few seconds later, with a powerful spatial pulse, the light in the teleportation formation subsided and revealed 4 people. The person at the lead was a young man. He wore luxurious white robes and possessed quite a striking appearance. There was uncontained arrogance on his face. The 3 others consisted of 2 middle-aged men and an old man. The 3 of them seemed much more ordinary than the white-robed young man. Their presences were completely concealed, making them look like normal mortals. However, no one believed that they were truly mortals, seeing how they had come through an interplanar teleportation formation. Cloud Plane, I've finally come. Jian Chen, did you think you would be without worries by hiding on the Cloud Plane? The method of the Exalted Saint is mine. This time, I will definitely take it back and complete the legacy. The white-robed young man studied the surroundings as he muttered to himself. The white-robed young man was the current leader of the Radiant Saint Hall from the Desolate Plain, Gong Sun Ji. As for the 3 people behind Gong Sun Ji, as soon as they set foot on the Cloud Plane, they all looked at the southern region, and a gleam of light flashed through their eyes. The light was like a bolt of lightning. It was astonishing. Even the space would pulse by an undetectable amount where they looked. Just the gaze possessed unfathomable might. It really was difficult to imagine just how terrifying these 3 people were. You, come over here. Gong Sun Ji pointed at a nearby cultivator and asked coldly, "Tell me, where is the Tian Yuan clan founded by Jian Chen located?" The cultivator who Gong Sun Ji pointed at was only a deity. He was pale-faced and filled with unease. He arrived before Gong Sun Ji as he trembled slightly, about to speak. "Leader, there's no need to ask. We already know where Jian Chen is," said a middle-aged man behind Gong Sun Ji. The light in his eyes flickered as he stared at the southern region. He said slowly, "We've come at the perfect time. There's a fascinating show going on the Cloud Plane right now. Not only have we found Jian Chen, but even the other people from the martial soul lineage are here." "What? The martial soul lineage is here as well?" At first, Gong Sun Ji was surprised, but he immediately became overjoyed. Battle intent filled him. Although he was still a radiant god king, he had become brimming with vigor and was absolutely haughty after gaining the greatest protector sword. He completely looked down on the martial soul lineage. There was indeed no reason for him to fear the martial soul lineage given his possession of the protector sword. Chapter 26:15. Encounter, it really is all up to luck. Ha ha ha. Martial soul lineage, I was just worrying about how I would find you, but all of you would actually be on the Cloud Plane. This is fantastic. It looks like even the heavens are helping me. Gong Sun Ji laughed aloud. Impatient, he immediately urged the 3 people behind him and said, "Quick, quick, quick. Go over there. Don't let them escape. Not only will I kill that traitor Jian Chen this time and take back the method of the Exalted Saint, but I want the martial soul lineage devastated as well." Although he knew Jian Chen and the martial soul lineage were currently on the Cloud Plane, Gong Sun Ji's cultivation was only equivalent to God King. All of his senses were limited. He was unable to see what was going on in the southern region from the central region. Basically only Grand Primes and an extremely limited number of Chaotic Primes could do that. Don't panic, leader. The martial soul lineage is currently locked in an intense battle with some other organization on the Cloud Plane. It's impossible for them to leave any time soon, said the gray-robed, skinny old man from behind Gong Sun Ji. With that, he swung his hand, and an invisible energy immediately wrapped around Gong Sun Ji. Afterwards, the 2 of them vanished. The two middle-aged men who had come with Gong Sun Ji stared in the direction of the southern region. Their profound gazes seemed to be able to pierce through space, allowing them to witness the battle in the southern region. Gong Sun Ji really is a little too hopeful, seeing how he wants to devastate the martial soul lineage. They're not that easy to wipe out, one of the middle-aged men said indifferently. He was called Su Jiping, the ancestors of a renowned peak clan on the desolate plain, the Su family. Although the martial soul lineage has been devastated before through history, the people who did that were basically all 9th heavenly layer grand primes. Gong Sun Ji is still too young after all. His understanding of the martial soul lineage is still rather limited. He is dreaming if he wants to devastate the martial soul lineage. However, his Godslayer's sword might be able to pose some threat to the martial soul lineage, the other middle-aged man added relaxedly. He was Huang Fu Gi, the ancestors of another peak clan on the desolate plain, the Mid-Heaven clan. Both the Su family and the Mid-Heaven clan were existences that stood at the very peak of the desolate plain. Before the Radiant Saint Hall gained their protector swords, the two clans were definitely more powerful than the Radiant Saint Hall. As a matter of fact, the Su family and Mid-Heaven clan could be described as terrifying existences only second to the Celestial Sword Saint. Fortunately, the protectors of the Radiant Saint Hall aren't on the same page, or they'll be far more than just Gong Sun Ji. However, that might not be good for us, said Huang Fu Gi. The ancestor of the Su family, Su Jiping, nodded. Fellow Gi, we should go as well. If we're late, we'll make that kid Gong Sun Ji unhappy. If he suddenly changes his mind and refuses to give the 3 other protector swords to the juniors of our clans, we'll be in for a great loss. Yeah, it's best if we do our utmost to avoid making Gong Sun Ji change his mind before we get the protector swords. Even though he's basically like a scoundrel, he is the only successor of the Tower of Radiance. For the sake of the protector swords, we'll just endure it for now, said Huang Fu Gi. With that, the two of them suddenly vanished. Deafening rumbles constantly rang out in the southern region. Terrifying pulses of energy shook up the surroundings. Every single attack from Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji was devastating. They would erupt with blinding light when they struck the protective formations of the Four Symbols Alliance, causing it to shake. Now, the surroundings bore no resemblance to the past. A huge crater had appeared, and the surrounding mountains had all been flattened. I can already sense that the protective formation of the Four Symbols Alliance is weakening. It looks like they can't last for much longer, Zhou Zhidao called out eagerly and excitedly. He knew that once the protective formation was destroyed, the Four Symbols Alliance would be completely destroyed, and from then onwards, the Cloud Plane would only have a righteous alliance. Their attacks are too powerful. The formation's energy has depleted faster than we expected. We can't last much longer, Gong Ji growled from within the Four Symbols Alliance. Don't panic. I'll take action the moment the formation breaks, the young Star Lord said emotionlessly as a vicious light appeared in his eyes. With that, all the unsettled people in the Four Symbols Alliance calmed down slightly. The young Star Lord had basically become what everyone in the Four Symbols Alliance depended on. I hope the young Star Lord can really turn the tide of the battle, many people of the Four Symbols Alliance secretly prayed. At this moment, 2 figures appeared silently behind the Righteous Alliance. They were Gong Sun Ji and the gray-robed, skinny old man. As soon as Gong Sun Ji arrived, his expression changed slightly from the terrifying pulses of energy that shook up the surroundings. He had never seen such an intense battle and such turbulent energy. What happened here? Gong Sun Ji thought. He calmed down very soon and began to look around. He directly glanced past the Four Symbols Alliance and Righteous Alliance before locking onto the illusionary martial soul mountain that hovered in outer space. At the same time, Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji sensed Gong Sun Ji's arrival. They subconsciously stopped their attacks and all stared at the skinny old man. Their faces changed slightly. 3rd Heavenly Layer Grand Prime. Tong Wuming, Lian Wuji, and Zhou Zhidao looked at each other. They became rather stern. They could already tell the old man's strength. He was actually at the same level as the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. It's actually Sha Yun from the Divine Blade sect. In outer space, Han Zong, Chu Jian, and Yu Zhao immediately discovered Gong Sun Ji's arrival as well. They all stared at the old man and frowned. At the same time, Su Jiping and Huang Fu Gi appeared silently, standing beside the skinny old man. Their appearance immediately made Han Zong, Chu Jian, and Yu Chao become stern. Su Zhiping of the Su family and Huang Fugi of the Mid-Heaven clan. The two of them have actually both come. This time, Hun Zhang's voice was rather stern. Su Zhiping and Huang Fugi gave them much greater pressure than Sha Yun. With that, Jian Chen looked over. He was not familiar with Sha Yun, Huang Fugi, and Gong Sunji, but he recognized Gong Sunji with a single glance and sensed that the situation had taken a turn for the worse. Ha ha ha, Jian Chen, this leader of the Radiant Saint Hall has finally found you and the martial soul lineage. You can't escape this time, Gong Sunji bellowed out from below. Immediately, an extremely powerful streak of light erupted from his body. It was blinding like the sun, illuminating the surroundings. The greatest protector sword, Godslayer's sword, appeared in his hand. The sword erupted with an earth-shaking pulse of energy. It was so powerful that as soon as it appeared, it caused space to shake and warp with great intensity. The expressions of Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji all changed drastically. Chapter 26:16. Gong Sunji takes part, so powerful. Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji were shocked. Their pupils shrank to the size of pins as their minds shuddered. Out of the three of them, Zhou Zhidao was a first heavenly layer Grand Prime, while Tong Wuming and Lian Wuji were both second heavenly layer Grand Primes. Such strength was basically enough for them to be ultimate existences on the cloud plane. A stomp of their feet was enough to make the entire place shake. However, the power that Gong Sunji had erupted with was so powerful that the expressions of the three all changed, where their minds fell into turmoil. And the part that made them feel the most troubled was that the expert that had suddenly appeared and astonished them seemed to be hostile towards Jian Chen and the martial soul lineage. Right now was a crucial moment in destroying the Four Symbols Alliance completely. Just when the protective formation was about to fall, just when the Four Symbols Alliance was about to be completely destroyed, such a powerful existence had suddenly appeared. As a result, Zhou Zhidao, Tong Wuming, and Lian Wuji's expressions became rather ugly. At that moment, all the experts they had brought with them stopped attacking the Four Symbols Alliance. Gong Sunji wielded Godslayer's sword as he basked in dazzling light, illuminating the surroundings in a godlike manner. He turned into a streak of light and flew into outer space. Before he had even approached the martial soul mountain, he had already slashed out with his sword. Immediately, the astonishing power in Godslayer's sword suddenly erupted. It made the world pale and the stars dim. The icy, dark space seemed to be cut in half by that slash. A huge, pitch-black crack appeared, devouring all light. As Godslayer's sword was swung, a terrifying streak of light shot towards the martial soul mountain with unbelievable speed, earth-shaking power, and devastating presence. Wherever the streak of light passed by, the cold, dark space would shake violently. Swathes of space would warp and collapse. The power in the slash had reached the limit. It had surpassed what the space there could endure, so even the slightest pulse was enough to make the space shake. There's nothing to worry about with Gong Sunji. He wields Godslayer's sword, but his cultivation is just too low. He's unable to wield the power of the sword perfectly. As such, he can't harm us as long as we're careful, Yu Chao said sternly from the mountain soul. With that, he changed the location of the mountain soul. When the mountain soul moved, it was as fast as teleportation. In the blink of an eye, the mountain soul had shifted 10,000 kilometers from its original location. Although the astonishing attack from Gong Sunji was utterly devastating, it did not seem to be able to lock onto the martial soul mountain. As a result, the attack completely missed as the martial soul mountain had moved. It vanished into the depths of space in the end. Gong Sunji produced a furious bellow. He continued his attacks, where every swing erupted with destructive might. However, the martial soul mountain did not receive them forcefully. They managed to dodge it with ease every time. Seeing how his attacks were dodged time and time again, Gong Sunji finally could not stand it anymore. He bellowed out, "Martial soul lineage, if you have the courage, don't run. Face me in open battle." Jian Chen stared at Gong Sunji from the mountain soul as he frowned as well. If Gong Sunji did not possess a protector sword, he would only be an ant-like existence in his eyes. However, he had to admit that this puny god king was beyond what he could handle now that he possessed a protector sword. But it seems like only Gong Sunji of the 6 protectors of the Radiant Saint Hall are here. Jian Chen glanced past the cloud plane. When he failed to find Bai Yu and Han Xian, he was relieved. The wielders of the protector sword should be completely up to the artifact spirit to choose, or it would be impossible for Junior Bai Yu and teacher Han Xian to receive them. After all, there are far too many people who are stronger than them in the Radiant Saint Hall. It looks like I need to find a way to pay a visit to the Tower of Radiance, thought Jian Chen. Back in the Tower of Radiance, Gong Sun Ji had demonstrated hostility and killing intent towards him. The artifact spirit should have known this, but the most powerful protector sword still ended up in Gong Sun Ji's hands. As a result, he sensed something was off and could not help but worry for the artifact spirit. First senior brother, second senior brother, I've personally experienced the might of protector swords. As a result, my understanding towards them eclipses yours. Let me handle Gong Sun Ji. Be careful of Hongfu Gi and Su Jiping. They've come with Gong Sun Ji, so they must be working with him, Yu Chao said sternly. With that, he directly flew away from the mountain soul. All his energy surged as he charged right towards Gong Sun Ji. Gong Sun Ji seemed to become the only sun in the dark space as he held his protector sword. He shone with resplendent light, illuminating the entire cloud plain. He called out furiously and swung his sword mercilessly, cleaving through the galaxies right towards Yu Chao. Yu Chao dared not be careless as he faced the power of the protector sword. He was stern, refusing to receive Gong Sun Ji's attack openly. Instead, he dodged them with great agility. Afterwards, Yu Chao and Gong Sun Ji engaged in a dogfight. Actually, it was more like a game of cat and mouse, as Yu Chao had a deep understanding of the protector sword's power. He did not try to take on Gong Sun Ji's attacks, nor did he counterattack. He just dodged. If he took on the attacks, only he would suffer as the protector sword was just too powerful. If he counterattacked, Gong Sun Ji was protected by the protector swords. The power could even block martial soul force, so no attacks could harm Gong Sun Ji at all unless they could destroy the power from Godslayer's sword. As a result, dodging was the only way to deal with protector swords when the strength for an open battle was missing. However, as Gong Sun Ji struck out constantly, he discovered that while he did have Godslayer's sword, he failed to even touch Yu Chao's clothes. He could not help but become annoyed. Ha ha ha, does you martial soul lineage only know how to run before me? The renowned martial soul lineage that has existed since the ancient times does not even have the right to fight me. What cowards! I think there's no need for the martial soul lineage to exist anymore. You should be Yu Chao. Yu Chao, you infiltrated our Radiant Saint Hall last time and almost died to my hands. I never thought that you would just start running as soon as you saw me this time. Did you learn my strength from your wounds last time such that you developed fear towards me? Where you don't even have the courage to fight. Ha ha ha, martial soul lineage, since you fear me so much, I'll give you a chance to live. If you hand over Jian Chen's head then kneel and bow your heads 9 times before me, I'll let you live. Having run out of options, Gong Sun Ji started insulting them verbally. His attacks from Godslayer's sword were indeed devastating, but they could not touch Yu Chao, so he felt extremely aggrieved. He felt like he was punching cotton. Completely dissatisfying. It was a horrible feeling. After all, he was just a god king. He was nowhere close to a chaotic prime in all aspects. Even with a protector sword, his attacks completely lacked the spirit that they should possess. They could not lock onto Yu Chao. Many times, he could not even hit Yu Chao's shadow. Whenever Yu Chao changed his position, he would have to fling his head about to look for him. This was the disadvantage of possessing power that did not match up to one's cultivation. If the protector sword ended up in the hands of someone with a closer cultivation, every single strike could entrap the opponent firmly. It would completely lock onto them such that they could not dodge at all. Gong Sun Ji's cultivation is still a little too weak. He's just far too slow with his attacks. It really is a waste that such a powerful Godslayer's sword has ended up in his hands. On the cloud plain, Hongfu Gi, Su Jiping, and Sha Yun stared at the battle in outer space and secretly shook their heads. However, this is only temporary. Gong Sun Ji is under the protection of the protector sword. There's only a handful of people who can breach the protection and kill him, so he will mature in the end. As his strength constantly increases, he will become more and more terrifying, said the skinny old man, Sha Yun. Chapter 26:17. Su Jiping takes part. Hongfu Gi and Su Jiping nodded. They agreed with Sha Yun's words very much. We have to properly support Gong Sun Ji before he completely matures. We have to let him understand that our Mid-Heaven clan, Su family, and Divine Blade sect completely stand with him. Only when he treats us as the only people he can trust will he be willing to give the 3 remaining protector swords to the juniors of our organizations without worry. The protector swords are so powerful such that we can't afford to miss out on them, said Huang Fugi. The protectors of the Radiant Saint Hall don't have harmonious relationships with one another. Bai Yu, Han Xin, and Dong Lin Yanxue form one group. The father-son duo, Xian Zhan and Xian Ming, do not seem to take a stance. They seem to be neutral. Although Gong Sun Ji possesses the most powerful protector sword, he's alone. At a time like this, he needs people he can trust. Our 3 organizations can serve as what he can rely on the most. Aside from the Celestial Sword Saint, there's probably no other organization that can fend off the 3 of us combined on the desolate plain. As a result, the 3 remaining protector swords are definitely ours, Su Jiping said confidently. This was confidence that came from great strength, as no other peak organization on the desolate plain could contend with his Su family aside from the Mid-Heaven clan. Their Su family possessed 2 Grand Primes. Apart from Su Jiping, there was a second Heavenly Layer Grand Prime. At the same time, the Gentle Breeze ancestor, Wu Lu, Gong Ji, Chung Feng Yun, and He Dao stood together in the protective formations of the Four Symbols Alliance. They hovered high in the air as their eyes shone with excited light. They stared right at outer space. I never thought the enemies of the martial soul lineage would actually come at a time like this. This is fantastic. This is utterly fantastic. It looks like even the heavens are assisting us, Gong Ji said excitedly. She looked at Gong Sun Ji, who was fighting against Yu Chao in outer space. Although she did not recognize Gong Sun Ji, she had begun treating him as the person who had saved her life. It looks like the threat of the martial soul lineage has been resolved. I really never thought that 2 experts like this would appear on our cloud plane, the Gentle Breeze ancestor added. He stared at Huang Fugi, Su Jiping, and Shang Yun and became rather stern. 2 of them are 4th Heavenly Layer Grand Primes. Either one of the 2 are more powerful than the Heavenless Demon Exalt. What? 2 4th Heavenly Layer Grand Primes? He Dao was surprised when he heard that, and he could not help but cry out. Afterwards, he began to ravish with joy. At the same time, the treasured members of the Blood Sun Empire were about to retreat under the Blood Emperor's secret arrangements. They wanted to flee the cloud plane to avoid this crisis and preserve some survivors. The Shi Emperor did not leave. Instead, he remained in the throne room that represented great authority in the Blood Sun Empire with great composure. It was as if he wanted to prevent the 9th prince from slipping away during the retreat. The Blood Emperor's expression was frigid and terrifyingly sunken the entire time. The Shi Emperor's actions severely challenged the dignity of the Blood Sun Empire. He did not take the Blood Sun Empire seriously at all, so he made the Blood Emperor furious. However, their remaining 2 ancestral emperors were both in the headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance, ready to fight in a battle to the death against the Righteous Alliance. The current Blood Sun Empire did not possess anyone who could fend off the Shi Emperor with his cultivation as a chaotic prime. As a result, the Blood Emperor could only yield to the pressure from the Shi Emperor. However, at this moment, Gong Sun Ji and the martial soul lineage's battle attracted the attention of the Shi Emperor and the Blood Emperor. The Shi Emperor suddenly frowned and immediately looked at outer space. He gradually became stern. As for the Blood Emperor, he completely changed from his previously gloomy demeanor. His face lit up as he looked at outer space with shining eyes. Even though he was unable to see everything as clearly as the Shi Emperor, he was still able to see some things. Ha 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 ha, it looks like the martial soul lineage has quite a few enemies in the Saints' world. They're proactively looking trouble with the martial soul lineage, so it looks like the martial soul lineage's opponents are nothing but extraordinary. The Blood Emperor laughed aloud. All his gloom had vanished. With such a sudden change in the situation, who do you think will be the final victor now, Shi Emperor? The Blood Emperor looked at the Shi Emperor mysteriously. He felt uncontainable satisfaction when he saw how stern the Shi Emperor had become. The outcome of the battle between the 2 alliances directly affected the fates of their 2 everlasting empires. Senior Huangfu, Senior Su, Senior Sha, what are you waiting for? Trap down this person quickly. He escaped last time. I have to kill him personally this time. At this moment, Gong Sun Ji's vexed voice rang out from outer space. Don't worry, leader, we'll come help you right now. Xu Zhiping laughed aloud. He finally stopped holding back. His cultivation erupted violently, immediately forming a terrifying storm of energy that caused the ground to crack and the mountains to tremble. It made the expressions of Tong Wuming, Lian Wuji, and Zhou Zhidao all change drastically. The fourth heavenly layer. A grand prime of the fourth heavenly layer. The three of them cried out as their faces became extremely ugly. The fourth heavenly layer was mid-grand prime. This difference was definitely greater than the difference between the first heavenly layer and the second heavenly layer, or the second heavenly layer and the third heavenly layer. Across all these years, the Cloud Plane only had a single mid-grand prime expert, the Heavenless Demon Exalt of the Tian Empire. Even though the Heavenless Demon Exalt was already dead, everyone still remembered his influence. Now that an expert on the same level as the Heavenless Demon Exalt had appeared here, the hearts of the experts from the Righteous Alliance all sank. On the Martial Soul Mountain, Han Zong and Chu Jian became stern as well. Naturally, there was no reason for them to fear Xu Zhiping and Huang Fugi on any other day, but they were wrapped up in a battle with the Four Symbols Alliance right now. If these two took part, many unknown variables would appear. Xu Zhiping, Huang Fugi, Sha Yun, your three organizations have always been uninvolved with the matters of our martial soul lineage. Why must your three organizations get involved just because of Gong Sun Ji? Han Zong said sternly. Han Zong, speak no more. In the past, we were unwilling to offend your martial soul lineage because the price would be far too great. However, it's different now. Your martial soul lineage will become a matter of the past, Xu Zhiping said indifferently. He took a step and immediately appeared in outer space. Erupting with terrifying energy, he directly sent a palm strike towards Yu Chao. Chapter 26:18. Han Zong injured Xu Zhiping used his full strength right from the start, completely unleashing his cultivation as a fourth heavenly layer Grand Prime. With his palm strike, the stars dimmed and galaxies were destroyed. The dark space had been pierced. It was truly devastating. Xu Zhiping clearly felt no reluctance towards becoming complete enemies with the martial soul lineage as he crossed the point of no return. He tried to kill as soon as he struck out, aiming to claim Yu Chao's life on the spot. So powerful. Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji hovered high above the cloud plane. They tilted their heads and looked at what was happening in outer space. They were all extremely stern. In particular, their hearts shivered when they witnessed Xu Zhiping's strength. As all of this happened, the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak had already become completely green on the Heavens Link Peak. These were clearly signs of the curse spreading. Even though the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak forcefully suppressed it with his cultivation as a peak third heavenly layer Grand Prime, he could only reduce the rate at which it spread to buy some more time for himself. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak stood on the Heavens Link Peak as he stared at outer space. His face was filled with worry. This Xu Zhiping is so powerful. His battle prowess has completely exceeded the Heavenless Demon Exalt. Even among fourth heavenly layer Grand Primes, Xu Zhiping probably ranks towards the top. It'll be problematic now. Although the martial soul lineage is known to possess unmatched battle prowess, their personal cultivation levels are just too low. They can't deal with fourth heavenly layer Grand Primes at all, the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak said in worry. He wanted to help, but he was already busy enough himself. He was in no state to provide assistance. Ha ha ha, it'll be interesting now. The greatest help the Righteous Alliance has is the martial soul lineage, but now it looks like the martial soul lineage can't even protect themselves. The Blood Emperor stared at outer space excitedly. His current emotions could no longer be put into words. Hold on. Don't leave yet. We still don't know who will emerge as the victor in the very end. Perhaps our Blood Sun Empire will become the only everlasting empire on the Cloud Plane before long. The Blood Emperor stopped the members of the Imperial family, who were about to be teleported away. He looked at the Shi Emperor in a provoking manner as he laughed aloud. His mood was extremely great. Meanwhile, in the Shi Empire in the northern region, their two ancestral emperors, Shi Haoshuan and Shi Haoming, hovered in the air. They stared at outer space sternly. Aside from the two of them, the Zaheo Empire in the eastern region, the Jinjian Empire in the western region, and all other organizations and primordial realm experts across the 5 regions paid close attention to the battle in outer space. All of them understood that this battle did not determine something as simple as the future distribution of power on the Cloud Plane. It determined their fates as well. Aside from the Pingtian Empire and the Heavenly Moon Empire on the current cloud plane, basically all other organizations had been absorbed into the Four Symbols Alliance or the Righteous Alliance. As soon as one of the alliances fell, all the organizations under the alliance would face the threat of destruction. In the past, there was no need for everyone to be as worried as right now, as 4 of the 5 regions belonged to the Righteous Alliance. The Righteous Alliance had a crushing advantage over the Four Symbols Alliance. But it was different now. With the entry of the experts from the Desolate Plain, the Righteous Alliance that was supposed to emerge victorious was now facing great danger. This naturally weighed on all of their minds. The expressions of everyone from the martial soul lineage changed when they saw Xu Zhiping attack Yu Zhao. Martial Soul Array. As the strongest expert of the martial soul lineage, Han Zong immediately bellowed out. Before he had even finished talking, he shot off like a bolt of lightning. His presence surged as he charged right towards Xu Zhiping. Powerful energy gathered on his body. Even martial soul force secretly began to surge. At that moment, Han Zong was ready to risk his life, as the martial soul array needed time to reach completion. Although it would take a very short amount of time, he clearly could not afford to wait for it. As a result, Han Zong could only use his personal strength to forcefully receive Xu Zhiping's strike. He was facing a 4th Heavenly Layer Grand Prime's attack as a 9th Heavenly Layer Chaotic Prime. Be careful, senior brother. Yu Chao immediately warned him when he saw Han Zhang's actions. Worry filled his eyes. Xu Zhiping's strength could not be compared to regular 4th Heavenly Layer Grand Primes. He and Huangfu Gi were both experts who ranked towards the top in their level of cultivation. They were supreme prodigies when they were young. As such, even though they could not claim that they were invincible among the same level of cultivation, they were not far from it. That works as well. Han Zong, allow me to witness just how powerful the person who is known as the strongest in the martial soul lineage is. Xu Zhiping remained calm as if he did not fear the martial soul lineage much at all. He was only worried because he had a large organization behind him, which tied him down. With that, Xu Zhiping's palm strike that originally targeted Yu Chao shot towards Han Zong. With a rumble, the space there shattered. The palm strike seemed to lock down the entire space, completely enveloping Han Zong such that he could not dodge. Immediately, Han Zong felt like a mountainous pressure, as if the entire world weighed on his body. However, he was no regular 9th Heavenly Layer Chaotic Prime. His comprehension remained at the 9th Heavenly Layer of Chaotic Prime, but his cultivation had completely defied logic and reached Grand Prime. Even though it was only the 1st Heavenly Layer of Grand Prime, it was a colossal difference from the 9th Heavenly Layer of Chaotic Prime. Han Zong also struck out with his hand. The palm strike condensed his vital energies and contained his peak strength. The attack was extraordinary. As soon as he struck out, the world would fade and souls would shake. Tremendous martial soul force gathered in the palm strike, affecting the souls of people. Bang! A devastating boom exploded in the shattered space. Xu Zhiping and Han Zhang's hands collided like 2 colossal planets, erupting with a devastating pulse of energy that caused space to tremor. Spurt! Blood sprayed out from Han Zhang's mouth as he was knocked away like a bolt of lightning. His blue robes had already been ravaged to dust by the violent energy, revealing the black armor inside. The armor rapidly flickered as it dimmed quickly. The armor was a god artifact, and a medium-quality god artifact at that. It had an extremely sturdy defense. However, even with that being the case, Han Zong was still injured by Xu Zhiping's palm strike. Chapter 26:19. The might of the array. As Xu Zhiping stood in space, the presence he emitted was utterly astonishing. He gave off the terrifying pressure of a 4th Heavenly Layer Grand Prime, startling all the experts on the cloud plane. He stared at Han Zong coldly as the latter flew back, and a strange light appeared in his eyes. He said in an extremely indifferent tone, "I did not hold back at all with my palm strike. You received it with just your strength, yet you only suffered from some slight injuries. The martial soul lineage really does deserve its reputation for its strength. Unfortunately, the difference in our cultivation is just too great. It's impossible for you to be my opponent." With that, Xu Zhiping took a step and crossed through space, appearing before Han Zong like he had teleported. Raising his hand, he struck towards Han Zong with terrifying power. With the palm strike, the space around Han Zong seemed to compress. Xu Zhiping's attack possessed a mysterious power, making the space around Hun Zong seize up in an attempt to restrain Hun Zong. At that moment, Hun Zong felt immobilized. His movements were restricted. After all, Xu Zhiping was just too powerful. Even though his battle prowess was not on par with 5th Heavenly Layer Grand Primes, he was extremely outstanding among the 4th Heavenly Layer. Hun Zong was clearly on a much lower level compared to Xu Zhiping. However, at this moment, a tremendous power immediately transferred through space through a method that no one could sense, pouring into Hun Zhang's body. The martial soul array was finally complete. The power from Chu Jian, Yun Ziding, Xueqi, Bai Rufeng, Qing Shan, and Jian Chen fused together perfectly through the martial soul array. It tied their vital energies and cultivation together, stacking onto Hun Zong with the power from the mountain soul. This was a unique secret technique of the martial soul lineage. It was extremely profound. The power could be transferred through space such that even if they were quite far away from Hun Zong, the connection would not be affected at all. No one could sever it. As soon as the martial soul array was completed, Hun Zhang's presence exploded. In just that short instance, his presence had risen to a level where it did not pale in comparison to Xu Zhiping at all. It was only stronger. If it were just the power from the 6 of them, it would have been impossible for Hun Zong to reach such a level even when they combined perfectly. However, there was the power from the mountain soul. That made all the difference. As a result, not only was the power of the 6 other successors gathered on Hun Zong, but there was also power from the mountain soul. After Hun Zong gained such great power, Xu Zhiping could no longer keep him trapped. The pressure on him immediately vanished, and he punched out the martial soul array. At the same time, a gleam of light flashed through Xu Zhiping's eyes. The martial soul lineage had been in conflict with the Radiant Saint Hall for so many years, and they had once clashed with the many experts of the Desolate Plain in order to save Jian Chen. As a result, he was not unfamiliar with the martial soul array. Xu Zhiping's attack remained the same, possessing the same suppressive might as before. However, his presence suddenly rose, becoming even more powerful. At the same time, the laws of the world revolved around him, causing him to suddenly shine with blinding and scorching light. At that moment, his hand became surrounded by light as well. As if a sun had been compressed in his hand, it shone with dazzling light, illuminating the dark cosmos. Boom! With a violent rumble, Hun Zhang's terrifying punch directly collided with Xu Zhiping's hand. Space collapsed. This time, Xu Zhiping did not manage to knock Hun Zong away like before. Instead, he was the one who was knocked away. The dazzling light on his body rapidly faded as his expression became very ugly. Not only has the martial soul array increased your strength, but it has strengthened your martial soul force as well. Your martial soul force could not affect me at all before, let alone harm me, but now it can harm my soul, Xu Zhiping said with a growl. His soul had received quite the impact when he clashed with Hun Zong. He was unable to defend against it at all. Xu Zhiping looked at the cloud plane and called out, "Huang Fu Gi, let's fight Hun Zong together. Sha Yun, deal with the martial soul mountain. Interfere with them and find a way to disrupt their martial soul array. It's time for us to take action." Huang Fu Gi smiled on the cloud plane. With that, he suddenly vanished and appeared next to Xu Zhiping. "No problem. Leave the martial soul mountain to me," called out the ancestor of the Divine Blade sect, Sha Yun. His presence erupted. He happened to be at the peak of the 3rd heavenly layer of Grand Prime. Sha Yun was extremely powerful as well. Even though he was not as great as Xu Zhiping and Huang Fu Gi, he was only a step away from the 4th heavenly layer. He directly appeared outside the mountain soul. A brutal blade intent surged as a blade appeared in his hand. He gave off cold killing intent as he slashed his blade at the mountain soul in an unstoppable manner. As he slashed out, a silver streak of light appeared in the air. It was tiny, but it was also devastating. Wherever it passed by, space was cut open like paper. The streak of light was clearly a combination of blade intent and blade chi. Sha Yun had already attained a great level of mastery over the way of the blade, so the power in his attack was completely condensed into a single streak, multiplying the power as a result. Hun Zong ignored Sha Yun. He did not even look at Sha Yun as he attacked the mountain soul, as if he did not care at all. Even the people on the mountain soul did not pay attention to Sha Yun. Boom! With an astonishing sound, Sha Yun's attack struck the energy barrier around the mountain soul with brutal power. However, it only made the energy barrier twist slightly. Sha Yun's eyes turned cold. He was not surprised at all. He continued his attacks with his blade. He knew that the illusionary martial soul mountain was only condensed from tremendous energy. It was not the true martial soul mountain. He was depleting this energy with his attacks. Xueqi glanced in the direction of the mountain soul and said, "In the past, the martial soul mountain could even endure attacks from the heavenly king of azure brilliance for a while. Although the heavenly king of azure brilliance is at the 4th heavenly layer just like us, his bloodline as a divine beast is so powerful that he can even kill some regular 5th heavenly layer grand primes. Even the heavenly king of azure brilliance could not get through the martial soul mountain quickly, so it's even more impossible for Sha Yun. Sha Yun isn't enough to disrupt them." After a slight pause, Xueqi continued, "Su Zhiping, your laws of the sun are better suited for getting through formations. Attack the martial soul mountain with Sha Yun. Leave Han Zong to me." Chapter 26-20. The tides turn again. Su Zhiping nodded and said, "All right. Be careful of Han Zhang's martial soul force. That kind of power is just too damaging to the soul, and you can't block it either. Especially after the martial soul array has been completed, the martial soul force has reached a level where it can even harm you and me." With that, Su Zhiping shot off and arrived before the mountain soul in an instant. At this moment, Sha Yun wielded his blade as a brutal blade intent condensed around him. He constantly launched attacks at the mountain soul. Immediately, the space there was filled with blade chi. Strands of sharp, overbearing blade intent permeated the area as they cut through space, creating densely packed cracks throughout the entire region. The cracks were extremely tiny, but they were like rain, enveloping the entire mountain soul. Moreover, that was just the influence from the blade intent. If Sha Yun personally attacked with his weapon, the power could split the world and shatter galaxies. "Rise, sun." At the same time, Su Zhiping stood before the mountain soul and called out. The cold, dark space suddenly became filled with scorching heat as a bright light rose up from Su Zhiping. The light grew more and more intense, more and more scorching. In less than a few seconds, the light on Su Zhiping had reached an indescribable level, and the terrifying heat made space constantly twist. At that moment, Su Zhiping seemed like he had become a sun, illuminating the dark cosmos. The intense light and scorching heat directly reached the cloud plain as if the sweltering summer had arrived. No, it was even more terrifying than the scorching summer sun. The light alone blinded countless low-level cultivators on the cloud plain. Even godhood cultivators struggled to keep their eyes open, and some infinite primes even felt a stabbing pain in their eyes, making them no longer dare to just look at the sky. That was the light alone, so just how terrifying the heat was went without saying. Under the heat, countless low-level cultivators fled for their lives. They found various holes and places to hide in. All the plants withered at a visible rate as signs of life vanished. This was Su Zhiping's laws of the sun. He had become the sun, except he was far more terrifying than the real sun. "Martial Soul Mountain, I would like to see how long you can last under my laws of the sun." Su Zhiping's voice rang out from the blinding radiance. In the next moment, the sun around him immediately began to swell, reaching the size of a planet and directly enveloping the mountain soul. Immediately, the mountain soul vanished. It had been swallowed up by the planetoid sun condensed from the laws of the sun. The sun was like a prison, keeping the martial soul mountain firmly trapped. The laws of the sun surged in its interior. They had almost become tangible, becoming surging solar flames that burned at the mountain soul with terrifying power. Su Zhiping sat at the center of this colossal sun. He used his comprehension of the laws of the sun to constantly condense the power of the sun and replenish the losses that the sun had sustained. Su Zhiping was unable to forcefully break through the defenses of the mountain soul, so he chose the method of rapidly depleting its power to get through it. In other words, he chose this method to interfere with the martial soul lineage's martial soul array. However, Su Zhiping's actions did not affect the interior of the mountain soul at all. The dazzling light and terrifying heat failed to get inside. All the light and all the heat was blocked and kept outside by the energy barrier from the mountain soul. None of it managed to pass through. However, Su Zhiping's actions really did take a heavy toll on the energy of the mountain soul. To another side, the ancestor of the Mid-Heaven clan, Xueqi, had already begun fighting with Han Zong. Xueqi comprehended the laws of slaughter, so his every strike condensed the power of slaughter. It ripped through the world and was extremely dangerous. He was embroiled in an intense battle against Han Zong. The martial soul lineage can't even protect themselves now. This is the perfect opportunity to destroy the Righteous Alliance. Open the formations, then everyone attack. Just as the experts of the Desolate Plain were locked in combat with the martial soul lineage, the Four Symbols Alliance that had only been defending earlier made use of this rare opportunity to launch a counterattack. Immediately, the protective formations of the Four Symbols Alliance opened up, and all the experts gathered inside charged out, embroiling in a battle against the three organizations of the Righteous Alliance. The Gentle Breeze ancestor, Gong Ji, Wu Lu, Chong Feng Yun, and He Dao immediately surrounded Tong Wuming, Lian Wuji, and Zhou Ji Dao. They all unleashed their full power to try and kill the three of them. Immediately, the Righteous Alliance completely lost the upper hand. Tong Wuming, Lian Wuji, and Zhou Ji Dao were not the opponents of the 5 Grand Primes from the Four Symbols Alliance. Not only did the Grand Primes from the Four Symbols Alliance possess a numerical advantage, but they even had an expert like the Gentle Breeze ancestor. The battle only lasted for a short while before Tong Wuming, Lian Wuji, and Zhou Ji Dao all became wounded. As for the forces from the three organizations, they suffered heavy casualties. The formations fell one after another, and members and disciples of the Tong family, Fire God clan, and Cosmic sect were torn to pieces. Victory now tilted towards the Four Symbols Alliance. After the Righteous Alliance lost the God's Fallen clan, Daoist sect of Emergence, and the Heaven-Quaking sect, both their peak powers and the majority of their forces could no longer match up to the Four Symbols Alliance. Retreat! Retreat! Tong Wuming, Zhou Ji Dao, and Lian Wuji ordered a retreat in a hurry. Without the support of the martial soul lineage, they were not the Four Symbols Alliance's opponent. Zhou Ji Dao, my Daoist sect of Emergence was destroyed by you. You killed so many disciples of my sect, so how can I let you escape today? He Dao ground his teeth. Hatred filled his eyes as he stabbed his sword through Zhou Ji Dao's chest, causing him to constantly cough up blood. At the same time, there was a flash, and Wu Lu struck out. He cut off Zhou Ji Dao's right arm, causing the blood of the Grand Prime to spray into the air. Zhou Ji Dao was the weakest out of the 3 experts of the Righteous Alliance. He was only a first heavenly layer Grand Prime. As such, when he faced the combined attacks of He Dao and Wu Lu, who were at the first and second heavenly layers respectively, it was impossible for him to last very long. Pale-faced, Zhou Ji Dao was defeated. He began to flee from the southern region. Tong Wuming and Lian Wuji struggled to remain unscathed as well. They were covered in blood as they also began to retreat in defeat. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.